Some men save lives, others throw them away. Logan Reed was about to do both. The mountains were burning, and he was carrying a stranger through hell. Her blood soaked his shirt. His lungs screamed for clean air that didn't exist anymore. Behind them, flames ate the forest alive. Ahead, nothing but smoke and faith. She whispered that he should leave her. He tightened his grip instead. Because Logan Reed, single father, weekend volunteer, man who'd already buried one woman he loved, had made a choice the moment he lifted her off those concrete steps. He was either walking out with her, or he wasn't walking out at all. If you want to see how far a man will go when everything's burning down around him, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The alert came through at 2:47 p.m. on a Thursday that had started like any other. Logan Reed was restocking medical supplies in the back of Rescue Unit 7 when his phone buzzed with the emergency broadcast. Wildfire. Rapidly expanding. Mandatory evacuations for Pine Ridge Trail and surrounding areas. He read it twice, then looked out the open bay door toward the mountains. The sky above the western peaks had already turned the color of old rust. "That's going to be bad," said Martinez from the front seat, not looking up from his clipboard. Logan didn't respond. He was already calculating. The trailhead parking lot would need sweeping. There were at least 3 popular hiking routes that fed into that area, plus the old surveyor roads that most people forgot existed. Weekday afternoon meant fewer civilians, but fewer wasn't none. "We rolling out?" Martinez asked. "Yeah." Logan closed the supply cabinet and locked it. "Let's clear the zone." He'd been volunteering with Mountain County Search and Rescue for 3 years, ever since Jake turned 4 and started preschool, giving Logan a few free hours each week. It wasn't paid work. It didn't come with glory or recognition. It was just something he did because someone had to, and because sitting still had never been his strength. They took the truck up Highway 34, past the turnoff where the pavement ended and the Forest Service roads began. The smoke was thicker here, visible in horizontal bands cutting through the pine trees. Logan could smell it even with the windows up, that distinct scent of burning sap and superheated wood. "Dispatch says most folks already cleared out," Martinez said, reading updates off his phone. "Fire jumped the containment line about 40 minutes ago. They're pulling ground crews back." Logan nodded. Standard protocol. You didn't fight a wildfire with shovels when it was moving this fast. You got out of its way and let the aerial teams do their work. The parking lot at Pine Ridge Trailhead was empty except for 2 vehicles when they arrived. One was a ranger's truck, doors open, abandoned in a hurry. The other was a dark blue Subaru with California plates, parked at an angle like the driver had been in a rush. Logan climbed out and walked toward it. The hood was still warm when he touched it. "Someone's up there," he called back to Martinez. "Could have gotten a ride out with the ranger." "Could have." Logan looked at the trailhead sign. 3 routes diverged from this parking area. The main one, Pine Ridge Loop, was a moderate 4-mile circuit, popular with families. The second was a steep scramble to Summit Point, advanced hikers only. The third was barely maintained, an old access road leading to the abandoned fire lookout tower that hadn't been staffed since the 70s. Martinez came up beside him. "Fire's moving northeast. Main trail should be clear for another hour, maybe 2. We sweep it quick and get out." "What about the other routes?" "Dispatch didn't mention anyone on Summit Point, and nobody hikes the old lookout road anymore. It's half washed out." Logan looked at the Subaru again. Something about it bothered him, the way it was parked, the rental sticker on the bumper, the thin layer of dust on the hood, except where his hand had touched it. "I'll do a quick check of the access road," he said. Martinez frowned. "That's 15 minutes up and 15 back. We don't have the time, man." "Then you sweep the main trail. I'll be right behind you." "Logan, 15 minutes," Logan repeated, already moving toward his pack in the truck. "I'll radio when I'm clear." Martinez didn't argue further. They'd worked enough shifts together to know when the other one had made up their mind. Logan grabbed his medical kit, a handheld radio, and 2 bottles of water. The smoke was getting thicker, hanging in the trees like dirty wool. He started up the access road at a jog. The path was worse than he remembered, rutted from spring runoff, overgrown with manzanita and scrub oak. His boots kicked up dust that mixed with the smoke, making it hard to see more than 30 feet ahead. The grade was steep. the kind that made your calves burn and your breathing come hard. At the 10-minute mark, he almost turned back. Then he saw the backpack. It was lying on its side in the middle of the trail, a technical pack, the expensive kind with proper frame support and hydration bladder clips. Not abandoned, dropped. Logan picked it up, still heavy. He unzipped the main compartment and found what he expected. Survey equipment, a laser rangefinder, a handheld GPS unit, waterproof notebooks filled with coordinates and measurements, and at the bottom, a business card. Claire Morgan, Land Surveyor. Morgan and Associates, Oakland, CA. Logan looked up the trail, The smoke was darker here, closer. He could hear something now too, a sound like distant thunder, except it didn't stop. The fire, eating its way through the underbrush. Stupid, he muttered to himself. This was exactly the kind of decision that got rescuers killed. Going up into an active fire zone after someone who might not even be there, who might have already gotten out another way, He saw the boot. It was just visible around the next switchback, a hiking boot attached to a leg, the rest of the person hidden behind the curve of the slope. Logan's training kicked in immediately. He covered the distance in seconds, already pulling medical supplies from his kit. The woman was sitting on what looked like the remains of an old concrete foundation, probably part of the original access road infrastructure from decades ago. Her right leg was extended at an unnatural angle, the ankle visibly swollen even through the boot. Her face was pale, slick with sweat, but her eyes when they met his were sharp and clear. "You need to leave," she said immediately. Logan ignored that. He knelt beside her, hands already checking her pulse, elevated but steady, while his eyes scanned for other injuries. "My name's Logan. I'm with Mountain County Rescue. Can you tell me what happened?" "I can tell you that you're an idiot for coming up here." Her voice was strained but controlled. "The fire's less than half a mile out. I can smell it." "So can I. How'd you injure your leg?" She gestured sharply at the crumbling concrete. "Stepped wrong, went down hard, felt something snap. Couldn't put weight on it." Logan carefully touched the swollen ankle. She sucked in a breath but didn't pull away. Definitely broken, possibly a fracture to the fibula too. The boot had probably kept it from being worse, acting like a splint. "How long have you been here?" "Hour, maybe more. I radioed for help but couldn't get a signal." "Why didn't you try to move?" "Because I'm not stupid," she snapped. "Broken ankle, unstable ground, smoke inhalation risk. Moving would have made it worse. I figured someone would realize I was missing eventually." Someone did. Logan was already pulling an elastic bandage from his kit. "I'm going to stabilize this, then we're getting out of here." "I can't walk." "I know. I'm serious. I tried. I can't put any weight on it. You'll have to—" She stopped, seemed to recalculate. "You'll have to leave me. Come back with a proper team when the fire's out." Logan looked at her directly for the first time. Really looked. She was maybe 30, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail that had mostly fallen apart. Athletic build. The kind of practical outdoor clothing that meant she knew what she was doing in the backcountry. And eyes that were angry, not afraid. "That's not happening," he said simply. "You can't carry me down that trail. It's too steep, too unstable. I've carried heavier." It was true. He'd hauled a 200-pound man with a spinal injury down a rock slide 2 summers ago. She couldn't weigh more than 130, 140. "This is insane." "Yeah." Logan finished wrapping her ankle, then started repacking his kit. "But we're doing it anyway. What's your name?" She hesitated, like giving him that information was a concession. "Claire. Claire Morgan." "Okay, Claire Morgan." He stood and held out his hand. "I'm going to lift you. Try not to move that ankle." "Wait." But Logan was already moving. He'd done this enough times to know that hesitation only made it harder. He slid one arm behind her shoulders and one under her knees, careful to support the injured leg. She was lighter than he'd expected, or maybe the adrenaline just made it feel that way. "Put your arms around my neck," he said. Claire did, her grip tight. "This is the stupidest thing anyone's ever done for me." "I doubt that." Logan adjusted his hold, finding the balance point. "Ready?" "No." He started walking anyway. The trail down was harder than the trail up. Gravity worked against him now. every step requiring conscious control to avoid stumbling. The smoke was thicker, making his eyes water and his throat burn. Claire stayed quiet, her breath warm against his neck, her arms locked around him in a grip that suggested she understood exactly how precarious this was. 200 yards down, Logan's radio crackled. "Reed, where are you?" Martinez's voice was tight with stress. "Fire jumped the ridge. It's moving fast." Logan couldn't reach the radio without putting Claire down. "Tell him we're coming," he said. Claire fumbled for the radio on his belt, managed to key it. "This is Claire Morgan. We're on the access road heading down. ETA 10 minutes. Static then. Is that the civilian? Reed, what the hell? Tell him to have the truck running, Logan said. Claire relayed it. Martinez didn't respond immediately, but when he did, his voice was grimmer. Copy. But you've got maybe 5 minutes before that road's cut off. The fire's moving uphill toward the lookout. Logan picked up his pace. His shoulders were already burning, his breathing labored. Claire was a dead weight in his arms, not through any fault of hers, just physics. Carrying 135 pounds down a steep grade in smoke was like running with a weighted vest while someone held a pillow over your face. You can put me down, Claire said quietly. Rest for a minute. We don't have a minute. You're going to collapse. Not yet. It was bravado mostly. His legs were shaking, his vision narrowing at the edges. But he'd learned a long time ago that the body could do more than the mind believed possible. You just had to ignore the part of your brain that was screaming at you to stop. The smoke was black now, roiling through the trees like something alive. Logan could hear the fire clearly, not just the distant roar anymore, but the sharp crack of pine trunks exploding from the heat. Somewhere close, maybe just over the next ridge. There, Claire pointed. The parking lot appeared through the smoke like a mirage. Martinez was standing beside the truck, waving frantically. Logan stumbled the last 50 yards, his legs barely responding to commands anymore. Martinez grabbed Claire as soon as Logan reached the truck, helping to ease her into the back seat. You're insane, he said to Logan. Tell me later. Logan collapsed against the side of the truck, gasping. His arms felt like they'd been filled with concrete. We need to move. Now. Logan nodded, forced himself upright. Martinez was already behind the wheel. Logan climbed into the passenger seat, and they were moving before his door was fully closed. The access road out was a nightmare of smoke and falling debris. Martinez drove too fast for conditions, but too slow for safety, a calculation every rescuer understood. Through the rear window, Logan could see the orange glow in the trees behind them. Is she okay? Martinez asked. Logan turned to look. Claire was braced against the back seat, her injured leg elevated as best she could manage. Her face was streaked with ash and sweat, but she met his eyes steadily. I'm fine, she said. It was obviously a lie. Her ankle was destroyed, she'd been trapped on a mountain for over an hour, and she'd just been carried down a burning trail by a stranger. But Logan understood what she meant. She was alive. They'd gotten her out. Everything else was just details. They reached the highway, and Martinez turned south, away from the fire. The smoke thinned gradually, the sky returning to something approximating normal. Logan's radio was going crazy with traffic, multiple units responding, aerial support inbound, incident command establishing staging areas. We're taking her to Valley Medical, Martinez said. ETA 20 minutes. Logan nodded. He should report in, let dispatch know they'd found the missing civilian. He should check if there were other calls, other people who needed help. Instead, he just sat there, listening to his heart hammer against his ribs and trying to remember how to breathe normally. Thank you. It took Logan a moment to realize Claire was talking to him. You don't need to thank me, he said. Yes, I do. That was... She trailed off, seemed to be searching for the right words. That wasn't your job. You went back for me. You didn't have to do that. Logan didn't know how to explain that yes, actually, he did have to do that. That leaving her there had never been an option his brain would process. So he just said, You're welcome. The hospital was chaos when they arrived, not because of Claire, but because the fire was spreading and the ER was preparing for mass casualties. Martinez helped get Claire onto a gurney while Logan gave a rapid report to the triage nurse. Broken ankle, possible fibular fracture, smoke inhalation exposure, vitals stable. We'll take it from here, the nurse said, already wheeling Claire towards radiology. Claire looked back over her shoulder as they moved her away. "Will you be here?" she called. Logan didn't know how to answer that. He had his son to pick up from after-school care. He had reports to file. He had a life that didn't include standing around hospitals waiting for strangers. "I'll check on you before I leave," he said. It wasn't a promise, but it wasn't nothing either. Martinez drove him back to the rescue station. They didn't talk much, both too tired, too wired from adrenaline, too focused on just getting through the next task. Logan's truck was where he'd left it in the parking lot that morning, a lifetime ago. "You did good today," Martinez said as Logan climbed out. "We both did." "No, man. That thing you did, going back up there, that was something else." Logan shrugged. He didn't feel heroic. He felt exhausted and slightly sick, and like his shoulders might never work properly again. He drove to Little Learners Academy and picked up Jake, who launched himself into Logan's arms with the unquestioning enthusiasm of a 6-year-old who didn't know his father had just carried a stranger through a wildfire. "Dad, we made volcanoes today with baking soda." "That's great, buddy." Logan held him close for an extra moment, breathing in the simple scent of grape juice and playground mulch. "You smell like smoke." "There was a fire in the mountains. I was helping." "Did you save people?" Logan thought about Claire's sharp eyes, her angry voice telling him to leave, the weight of her in his arms as the forest burned around them. "Ah," he said quietly. "I saved someone." They went home to the small house Logan rented on the edge of town. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen that was too small but functional. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. Logan made dinner while Jake chattered about school, about his friend Marcus, about the science project they were planning. Normal life. Safe life. The kind of life Logan had built deliberately after everything fell apart 3 years ago. He didn't let himself think about the hospital, about whether Claire was okay, whether the surgery went well, whether she'd need pins or plates or... His phone rang. Unknown number. Logan almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Mr. Reed?" An unfamiliar voice. Female. Professional. "This is Sarah Caldwell from Valley Medical Center. You brought in Claire Morgan this afternoon?" Logan's stomach tightened. "Is she okay?" "She's fine. Out of surgery, resting comfortably. But she asked me to call you. She wanted you to know she's all right." Logan exhaled slowly. "Okay. Thank you. She also wanted me to give you a message." "What message?" There was a pause, then something that might have been amusement in the nurse's voice. "She said to tell you, the fire wasn't an accident." Logan stood very still in his kitchen, Jake's laughter from the living room suddenly distant. "What does that mean?" "I have no idea, Mr. Reed, but Ms. Morgan said you'd understand and that she needs to talk to you when you have time. She's in room 347 if you want to visit." The nurse hung up before Logan could respond. He stared at his phone, thinking about Claire's backpack, the survey equipment, the coordinates and measurements, the way she'd been out there alone on a Thursday afternoon, checking landmarkers that someone had apparently moved. The fire wasn't an accident. "Dad, can we watch a movie?" Jake called from the other room. "Yeah, buddy," Logan said automatically. "Pick something out." But his mind was already back in the mountains, carrying a woman who'd been too angry to be afraid, wondering what she'd found up there that someone thought was worth burning down a forest to hide. He should let it go. File his report, move on, focus on his own life and his son and the careful boundaries he'd built. He should. But Logan Reed had never been very good at walking away when someone needed help, even when he probably should. The mountains were still burning when night fell, orange flames visible for miles against the dark sky. In room 347 of Valley Medical Center, Claire Morgan lay awake despite the painkillers, her laptop open on the bedside table, reviewing the photographs she'd taken of moved survey markers. She'd found something up there, something someone didn't want found. And she'd need help proving it. She just hoped the man who'd carried her down a burning mountain was stubborn enough to listen, because this story was just beginning. Logan stood outside room 347 for a full 30 seconds before knocking. It was Saturday morning. He'd dropped Jake off at his mother-in-law's house. The woman still called him family even though her daughter had been gone 3 years, and driven to Valley Medical telling himself this was just a courtesy visit. Check on the woman he'd rescued. Make sure she was recovering. Basic human decency. The truth was more complicated, and Logan knew it. He knocked, heard a voice say, "Come in," with the kind of wariness that suggested Claire Morgan didn't get many visitors. She was sitting up in bed, laptop open, wearing a hospital gown that looked about 2 sizes too big. Her dark hair was loose around her shoulders, and her right leg was elevated in a complex-looking brace. She looked tired and pale, but her eyes were the same sharp, assessing gray he remembered from the mountain. "You came," she said. "You called." "I had a nurse call. I don't have your number." Logan moved into the room, staying near the door. Hospital rooms always made him uncomfortable. Too many memories of watching his wife fade away in a place that smelled exactly like this. Antiseptic and false hope. "How's the ankle?" he asked. "Surgically repaired. 3 screws, 1 plate. They say I'll walk again in about 12 weeks. Claire gestured at the chair beside her bed. "You going to stand there like you're ready to bolt, or are you actually going to listen to what I need to tell you?" Logan sat. "The nurse said you had a message, something about the fire not being an accident." "It wasn't." Claire turned her laptop so he could see the screen. "I'm a land surveyor. I was hired 3 weeks ago by a development company called Cascadia Properties to verify boundary lines for a proposed resort project in the Pine Ridge area. Luxury cabins, ski access, the whole premium mountain experience package." Logan looked at the screen. It showed a topographical map covered in GPS coordinates and measurement notes. "Okay. Survey work is pretty straightforward. You locate the existing boundary markers, usually metal pins driven into the ground decades ago, and you verify they match the property records. If they don't match, you document the discrepancy and file a report." "I'm guessing they didn't match." "They didn't match because someone had moved them." Claire pulled up a series of photographs on her laptop. "See this? That's a boundary marker that should be here," she pointed at a spot on the map. "But I found it here, 20 feet west, and this one was supposed to be at elevation 4,200, but it was at 4,150. Logan studied the images. He didn't know much about surveying, but even he could see the problem. "How do you know they were moved? Maybe the original survey was wrong." "Because I found the original holes." Claire clicked to another photo. Right where the markers were supposed to be. Still there, just filled with dirt. Someone dug up the original markers and replanted them in positions that would make the buildable land area look about 30% larger than it actually is. "Why would someone do that?" "Money." Claire's voice was flat. "Cascadia Properties is selling these resort parcels based on square footage. More land means higher prices, bigger profit margins. If the actual boundaries were used, half the proposed development would be sitting on federally protected watershed land. Completely unbuildable." Logan leaned back in the chair, processing. "So you found evidence of survey fraud?" "I found evidence that someone at Cascadia, or someone they hired, has been systematically falsifying property boundaries to make a multi-million-dollar development look legal when it's not." She paused. "And 2 days after I started documenting it, someone filed a burn permit for controlled agricultural clearing in an area half a mile from where I was working." "You think they started the fire deliberately?" "I think they started a small fire that got out of control. The wind shifted, the humidity dropped, and what was supposed to be a convenient accident to destroy my survey markers turned into a wildfire that burned 3,000 acres. Logan stared at her. "That's a serious accusation." "I know." "Do you have proof?" "I have photographs of the moved markers. I have my field notes documenting the discrepancies, and I have this." Claire pulled up an email on her screen. "Sent to me 4 days ago from an anonymous account. Subject line, 'Stop looking.' The email was short. 'You're measuring things that don't concern you. Finish the contracted work and file the standard report. Curiosity isn't worth what it costs.'" Logan felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Did you report this to the police?" "And tell them what? Someone sent me a vague email. I'm a surveyor who found irregularities in a land survey. They'd file it under civil dispute and tell me to hire a lawyer." Claire closed the laptop. "But then the fire happened, and I was trapped up there with a broken ankle, and I had a lot of time to think about the timing." "You think someone knew you'd be up there that day?" "My survey schedule was filed with the county and with Cascadia Properties. Anyone could have accessed it. And that access road, the one where you found me, It's the only route to the northern boundary markers. If someone wanted to make sure I couldn't get out—" She didn't finish the sentence. Logan stood and walked to the window. Outside, the morning was clear and bright, no sign of the smoke that had filled the sky 2 days ago. "What do you want from me, Claire?" "I want you to help me prove it." He turned. "I'm not an investigator. I'm a volunteer rescuer with a 6-year-old son and a day job in construction management. This isn't my area." "No, but you're someone who went back into a burning forest to find a stranger. You're someone who carried me down a mountain when the smart thing, the safe thing, would have been to leave. So I'm guessing you're also someone who gives a damn when people do bad things and think they'll get away with it." Logan didn't answer immediately. She wasn't wrong, exactly, but she also didn't understand what she was asking. He'd built his life around stability, around being present for Jake, around not taking risks that could leave his son without a father the way Logan's wife's cancer had left Jake without a mother. "I have responsibilities," he said finally. "I know, and I'm not asking you to abandon them." Claire's voice softened slightly. "I'm asking you to spend a few hours helping me gather evidence. The fire's out. The survey sites are still accessible. If we can document what's up there before Cascadia has time to fix the markers, I can't exactly hike up there myself right now." She gestured at her leg. "But you know the area, you know the trails, and you're already involved, whether you want to be or not. You pulled me out of there, you saved my life. Don't you want to know why someone was willing to burn down a forest to stop me from doing my job?" Logan did want to know. That was the problem. He thought about the email, about the timing of the fire, about Claire sitting alone on those concrete steps, ankles shattered, watching the smoke close in and knowing someone had put her there deliberately. "If I help you," he said slowly, "we do this smart. We document everything. We don't take unnecessary risks. And the second it looks dangerous, we hand it over to actual authorities. Agreed?" Claire smiled, the first real smile he'd seen from her. "Agreed. I need to be back by 4 to pick up my son." "Then we'd better get started." Logan stared at her. "You're in a hospital bed with a surgically repaired ankle. And you have functioning legs and a vehicle. I'll navigate, you'll hike. We can use my survey equipment. It's all still in my backpack, which should be in the hospital's property storage." She was already reaching for her phone. "I'll have them bring it up. You'll need the GPS unit and the camera with the telephoto lens." "Claire, the fire damage will have exposed some of the areas that were too overgrown for me to access before. If we're lucky, we might find evidence of the original marker holes that's even clearer now. But we need to go today, before Cascadia sends their own team up to assess fire damage and, coincidentally, fixes all their fraudulent survey work." Logan recognized the determination in her voice. It was the same tone she'd used when she told him to leave her on the mountain. The tone of someone who'd already made up their mind and was just waiting for the world to catch up. "You're stubborn as hell," he said. "So are you. That's why this will work." Against his better judgment, Logan found himself nodding. "I'll get the equipment. You talked to your doctor about signing yourself out for a few hours." "Already did. AMA discharge papers are on the table. I just needed a ride." Of course she did. 20 minutes later, they were in Logan's truck heading back toward the mountains. Claire sat in the passenger seat with her injured leg elevated on the dashboard, laptop balanced on her knees, directing him toward a fire service access point that would get them close to the northern survey markers without having to hike the full trail. "Turn left at the next marker," she said, studying the GPS coordinates. "There's an old logging road that connects to the ridge." Logan made the turn. The landscape up here still showed signs of the fire. Blackened trees, ash covering the ground like dirty snow. But the main burn had passed through quickly, leaving structure intact even as it consumed the underbrush. "It's strange," Claire said quietly, looking out the window. 2 days ago, I thought I was going to die up here. Now I'm back. We don't have to do this today. You just had surgery. The painkillers are excellent, and like I said, timing matters. Every hour we wait is another hour for someone to cover their tracks." They drove in silence for a while. The logging road was rough, forcing Logan to navigate carefully around fallen branches and washouts. Finally, Claire pointed to a clearing ahead. "Stop here. The first marker cluster should be about a quarter-mile northeast, just past that ridgeline." Logan parked and got out, retrieving Claire's survey pack from the back seat. The GPS unit was professional grade. The the kind that could pinpoint locations to within centimeters. The camera had a lens that looked like it could photograph individual blades of grass from 100 yards away. "You know how to use this stuff?" he asked. "I'll walk you through it. Put your phone on speaker." Logan called her number and propped his phone in his shirt pocket so she could hear everything. Then he started hiking, following the GPS coordinates she'd given him. The fire damage was more extensive up here. Entire sections of forest had been reduced to standing skeletons of charred wood, but the ground was clearly visible now. All the concealing underbrush burned away. "You should see a concrete survey monument in about 50 feet, Claire's voice said through the phone. "It'll look like a small pillar, maybe 6 inches tall." Logan found it exactly where she said, a weathered concrete marker with a brass cap on top, stamped with elevation and coordinate data. "Got it." "Okay, now take a photo of the monument, then use the GPS to record its exact position. The coordinates should be 44.7234 north, 121.5678 west. Logan did as instructed. The GPS reading came back different. "I'm getting 44.7229 north, 121.567 west, he heard Claire curse softly. "That's almost 60 feet off. Take photos of the surrounding area, especially the ground. Look for disturbed soil, holes, anything that looks like it's been dug up recently." Logan circled the monument with the camera, documenting everything. And then he saw it. About 15 feet east, a depression in the ground that the fire had exposed. The ash and loose soil had settled into what looked unmistakably like a filled hole. "Claire, I found something." "Describe it." He did, taking close-up photographs of the depression. The way the soil layering was different from the surrounding area. The faint outline that suggested something had been removed and the ground hastily backfilled. "That's where the original marker was," Claire said, her voice tight with controlled excitement. "Someone dug it up and moved it 60 feet west to expand the property boundary. Can you see if there's any trace of the original monument?" Logan searched the area carefully. At the bottom of the depression, partially buried in ash, he found a piece of broken concrete with brass embedded in it. "I've got a fragment of the original marker," he said. "Photograph it. Document everything. Then move to the next coordinate I'm sending you." They worked for the next 2 hours, Logan hiking between survey points while Claire directed him from the truck. At each location, the story was the same. Markers moved, original holes filled, boundaries systematically falsified to make protected watershed land look like buildable property. At the fourth site, Logan found something else. It was a tool, specifically a post hole digger with Cascadia Properties stenciled on the handle, lying discarded in the brush just beyond the fire's reach. "Claire, you need to see this." He carried the tool back to the truck and showed it to her. Her eyes went wide. "They left evidence," she said. "They actually left physical evidence of the fraud." Probably figured no one would ever find it out here. Or if they did, it wouldn't matter because the development would already be approved and built. Claire was already photographing the tool from every angle with her phone. "This connects Cascadia directly to the moved markers. Combined with my survey data and the photographs you just took, we have documentation of systematic fraud." Logan felt the weight of what they'd found settling over him. "What's the next step?" "We take this to the County Planning Commission, file a formal complaint, force them to halt the development approval until an independent survey can verify the boundaries." "Cascadia is not going to like that." "Cascadia can go to hell." Claire's voice was hard. "They falsified a land survey, endangered federal watershed protection, and probably started a wildfire that burned 3,000 acres and could have killed people. What they like doesn't factor into this." Logan admired her conviction, even as his practical side started calculating risks. "Companies that big have lawyers, money, influence. You sure you want to go up against them?" "Are you saying I shouldn't?" "I'm saying you should be prepared for them to fight back. Hard." Claire looked at him steadily. 2 days ago, someone left me trapped on a burning mountain. If you hadn't come back for me, I'd be dead. So yeah, I'm prepared to fight. The question is whether you're prepared to help me." Logan thought about Jake, waiting at his grandmother's house, probably watching cartoons and eating too many cookies. He thought about the carefully structured life he'd built, the boundaries he'd set, the promise he'd made to himself to never take risks that could leave his son alone. Then he thought about Claire sitting on those concrete steps, ankle shattered, telling him to leave because she understood the math of survival, about the weight of her in his arms as he'd carried her down through the smoke, about the fact that someone had been willing to commit arson and possibly attempted murder to protect a real estate fraud. "I'll help," he said. "But we do this right. We document everything. We make copies of all the evidence, and we don't go anywhere alone. If someone was willing to start a fire to stop you before, they're not going to be happy about you coming back with proof." "Agreed." Claire started copying the photos from the camera to her laptop, her fingers moving quickly across the keyboard despite the obvious pain she had to be in. "I'll put together a comprehensive report tonight. We can file it with the Planning Commission Monday morning." "You should probably rest. Let your ankle heal." "I'll rest when this is done." She looked up at him. "You know what kept me from panicking up there? When I was trapped and the smoke was getting closer?" Logan waited. "I kept thinking about the data, about the evidence I'd collected, about how if I died, all that proof would die with me and Cascadia would get away with it." Her voice was quiet but intense. "I'm not great at a lot of things, Logan. I'm terrible at small talk, I work too much, I don't have many friends because I'd rather spend time with my equipment than at social events, but I'm good at my job. I'm good at finding the truth in measurements and coordinates and cold, hard data. And I'm not going to let someone intimidate me into burying that truth just because they have more money and fewer ethics." Logan understood. It was the same stubborn determination that had made him turn around on that trail, that had kept him climbing even when his legs wanted to quit, that had made him refuse to let go when Claire told him to save himself. Some things mattered more than safety. "Okay," he said. "We'll file the report Monday. But between now and then, you stay somewhere safe. Not your hotel, not anywhere Cascadia knows to find you." "I don't have anywhere else." Logan heard himself saying it before his brain could fully process the implications. "You can stay at my place. I've got a spare room. It's not much, but it's off anyone's radar." Claire stared at him. "You barely know me. I know you're stubborn, competent, and someone's already tried to kill you once. That's enough." He started the truck. "Besides, my 6-year-old son is going to think it's extremely cool that I rescued someone from a fire. You'll be doing me a favor by making me look like a hero." "I'm not good with kids. Jake's not good with strangers either. You'll get along fine." It was absurd, really. Bringing a woman he'd met 2 days ago to stay in his home, involving himself in a legal battle against a corporation with deep pockets, risking the stable life he'd worked so hard to build. But as Logan drove back down the mountain with Claire beside him, her laptop full of damning evidence and her eyes bright with determination despite the pain she had to be feeling, he couldn't bring himself to regret it. Some people you met and forgot. And some people you carried down a burning mountain, and then you couldn't walk away even when the sensible thing would be to let them handle their own problems. Logan had never been particularly good at the sensible thing. They stopped at Claire's hotel so she could pack her belongings, which turned out to be 1 rolling suitcase and 3 equipment cases containing thousands of dollars worth of survey gear. Logan loaded everything into his truck while Claire settled the bill and checked out. "Room was paid through next week," she said as they drove toward his house. "But if someone knows I was staying there, I'd rather not be easy to find." Smart. Logan's house looked smaller than usual as they pulled up, a modest 2-bedroom rental with a yard that needed mowing and paint that needed refreshing. He'd never brought a woman here, not in the 3 years since Emma died. It felt strange opening the door and ushering Claire inside, helping her navigate the steps with her crutches. "It's not much," he said, suddenly aware of Jake's toys scattered across the living room floor, the breakfast dishes still in the sink, the general lived-in chaos of a single father's existence. "It's perfect," Claire said, looking around with what seemed like genuine appreciation. "Which room is mine?" He showed her to the spare bedroom, basically a storage room he'd half-heartedly tried to keep clear. There was a bed, at least, and a dresser. "I'll change the sheets," Logan said. "I can do it." "You just had surgery." "I can change sheets, Logan. I'm not helpless." They stared at each other for a moment, and then Logan laughed. "Okay, fair enough. Fresh linens are in the closet. I'm going to pick up Jake. We'll be back in about an hour." He left her there, already pulling her laptop out and setting up what looked like a mobile command center on the bed. The drive to his mother-in-law's house took 15 minutes. Susan opened the door before Logan could knock. She had a sixth sense about arrivals. "You look exhausted," she said immediately. "Long couple of days." "I saw the news about the fire. They said you pulled someone out." "Yeah." Susan studied him with the same sharp assessment her daughter used to have. "And this someone, she needs a place to stay, doesn't she?" Logan sometimes forgot that Susan had known him for 8 years, had watched him marry Emma, had been there when Jake was born, had held Logan together when the cancer won and his whole world fell apart. "It's complicated," he said. "It always is with you." But she smiled. "Jake's in the backyard. Go get him. And Logan, be careful. You've got good instincts, but sometimes those instincts make you take care of everyone except yourself." Logan found Jake playing with trucks in the sandbox, making explosion noises as he crashed them together. "Hey, buddy, ready to go home? Can we get ice cream? Maybe tomorrow. You always say maybe tomorrow." "This time I mean it." Logan helped Jake gather his toys. "Hey, we've got a guest staying with us for a few days. Her name's Claire. She hurt her leg, so we're helping her out." Jake looked up with interest. "Is she the person you saved from the fire?" "Yeah." "Cool." Jake seemed to accept this without question, the way kids did. "Can I ask her about the fire?" "Politely, and don't stare at her leg brace." "I won't stare. I'm good at not staring." They drove home, Jake chattering about his day with Grandma, about the cookies they'd made, about the cartoon he'd watched. Normal, everyday kid stuff that anchored Logan back to reality after the surreal morning of documenting land fraud on a burned mountainside. Claire was in the kitchen when they arrived, balanced on her crutches, attempting to wash the breakfast dishes Logan had left behind. "You don't have to do that," Logan said. "I'm staying in your house. I'm contributing." She looked at Jake. "You must be Jake." Jake stared at her for exactly 3 seconds, then remembered his manners. "I'm 6. Dad says you got hurt." "I broke my ankle," Claire gestured at the brace. "Stepped wrong on a mountain trail." "Does it hurt?" "Sometimes. The doctors gave me medicine that helps." "Cool." Jake seemed satisfied with this explanation. He grabbed a juice box from the fridge and disappeared into his room, trucks in hand. Logan finished the dishes while Claire leaned against the counter, watching. "He's cute," she said. "He's a good kid." "How long has it been? Since his mom?" Logan didn't know how she'd known to ask, but he answered anyway. 3 years, ovarian cancer. She fought for 18 months. "I'm sorry." "Yeah." He dried his hands, changed the subject. "How's the report coming?" "Almost done. I've compiled all the photographic evidence, GPS data, and my original survey notes." The pattern of fraud is clear. Cascadia systematically moved boundary markers to claim approximately 43 acres of federally protected watershed land as buildable property. She paused. "Conservative estimate? They stand to profit about $8 million from the fraud if the development goes through." Logan whistled low. "That's motive for a lot of bad behavior." "That's why we need to move fast. I want to file with the County Planning Commission first thing Monday, then send copies to the Forest Service and the State Land Use Board. Multiple agencies, multiple investigations. Harder to suppress or delay." "You've thought this through. I've had nothing to do but think for 2 days." Claire shifted on her crutches, wincing slightly. "And I keep coming back to the same question. Who specifically at Cascadia ordered the markers moved? This isn't something that happens by accident. Someone high up had to approve it. That's for investigators to figure out. Maybe, or maybe we can figure it out ourselves." She gestured to her laptop, still open on the kitchen table. "I've been looking into Cascadia's corporate structure. The Pine Ridge development is being managed by their mountain division, headed by a guy named Derek Holloway. Prior to joining Cascadia, he worked for 3 different development companies that all faced fraud investigations. Never convicted, but the pattern's there." Logan felt uneasy creeping up his spine. "Claire, we're not investigators. We're surveyors and rescue volunteers. Let the professionals handle the corporate research. I just want to know who I'm up against." "You're up against people with $8 million at stake. That's all you need to know to understand they're dangerous." They stared at each other across the kitchen, and Logan saw the exact moment Claire decided to back down. Not because she agreed with him, but because she was smart enough to choose her battles. "Okay, she said. We'll file the report Monday and let the authorities handle the investigation. But I'm keeping this research, just in case. It wasn't a victory, but Logan would take it. They spent the rest of the day in careful domesticity. Logan made dinner while Claire worked on a report. Jake played in his room. The evening news ran footage of the fire's aftermath. Normal life, except for the woman with the broken ankle documenting corporate fraud at Logan's kitchen table. After Jake went to bed, Logan found Claire still working, her laptop screen bright in the darkened kitchen. You should rest, he said. Almost finished. Logan poured 2 glasses of water and sat down across from her. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why does this matter so much to you? I mean, I get that it's fraud and it's wrong, but you're putting yourself at risk again to expose it. Why? Claire was quiet for a moment, her fingers still on the keyboard. Do you know what most people think surveyors do? Measure things? Stand around looking through equipment, getting paid to tell people where their property lines are. Boring technical work that doesn't really matter. She looked up at him. But here's the thing, it does matter. Property boundaries, elevation certificates, watershed delineation. All of that determines what gets built where, who owns what, how land gets used and protected. When someone falsifies a survey, they're not just lying about measurements. They're lying about fundamental truth. They're saying reality can be whatever serves their profit margin. And that pisses you off. Yeah, it really does. She smiled slightly. I told you I'm not good at a lot of things, but I'm good at finding the truth in data, at making measurements that can't be argued with, at proving what's real versus what someone wants to be real. So when someone tries to corrupt that when they use my profession to legitimize their fraud, I take it personally. Logan understood. It was the same reason he'd gone back up that trail. Some things mattered more than personal safety. We'll file the report Monday, he said, and then you'll let the authorities handle it. Deal? Deal. But Logan saw the determined look in Claire's eyes, and he knew that no matter what she'd agreed to, this wasn't over, not by a long shot. Monday morning arrived with rain, the first real precipitation since the fire, turning ash to mud and making the mountain roads treacherous. Logan dropped Jake at school, watched his son run through the droplets toward the building without looking back. That casual, 6-year-old confidence that his father would always be there to pick him up later. Claire was waiting in the truck, her completed report printed and bound in a professional folder, 3 identical copies sealed in waterproof envelopes. She'd been up since 5, Logan knew, because he'd heard her moving around the kitchen when he'd gotten up to make coffee. Ready? He asked. I've been ready since Saturday. She touched the envelope on her lap like a talisman. County Planning Commission first, then the Forest Service Field Office, then certified mail to the State Land Board. You're sure about this? It wasn't a question, but Claire answered anyway. Someone tried to bury me on that mountain, Logan. Literally. They moved survey markers, falsified data, and when I found out, they tried to make sure I'd never report it. So, yeah, I'm sure. The county building was a squat brick structure downtown, the kind of government architecture that prioritized function over form. Logan found parking and helped Claire navigate the wet steps with her crutches, holding the door while she maneuvered through. The Planning Commission office was on the 2nd floor. A woman at the front desk looked up as they entered, her expression shifting from bureaucratic boredom to concern when she saw Claire's leg brace. Can I help you? I need to file a formal complaint regarding the Cascadia Properties Pine Ridge development. Claire slid the envelope across the counter. Survey fraud, falsified boundary markers, encroachment on federally protected watershed land. The woman's eyebrows rose. That's a serious allegation. I'm a licensed surveyor. Everything's documented in that report. Photographic evidence, GPS coordinates, analysis of the fraudulent markers. I'm requesting an immediate halt to the development approval process pending an independent survey verification. The woman opened the envelope and began reading, her expression growing more serious with each page. This will need to go to the commissioners. They meet Thursday. The development is scheduled for final approval vote next Tuesday. Thursday's not fast enough. I understand, but the process allows for emergency injunctions when there's evidence of fraud or environmental harm. Claire's voice was calm but unyielding. That report documents both. I need someone with authority to review it today and issue a temporary halt to the approval vote. Logan watched the exchange with admiration. Claire might have said she wasn't good with people, but she knew exactly how to navigate bureaucracy when it mattered. The woman hesitated, then picked up her phone. "Let me get Mr. Chen. He's the senior planner." They waited in uncomfortable plastic chairs while rain drummed against the windows. Logan could feel Claire's tension, the way she kept shifting her weight to ease pressure on her ankle, the way her fingers tapped against the armrest. "It's going to work," he said quietly. "You don't know that. I know you've got proof. That counts for something. Proof only matters if people care enough to look at it." Before Logan could respond, a man in his 50s emerged from a back office. Asian features, wire-rimmed glasses, the slightly rumpled appearance of someone who spent more time reviewing documents than worrying about presentation. "Miss Morgan, I'm David Chen, senior planner. Melissa says you've filed a fraud complaint against the Pine Ridge development." "That's correct." Claire stood, balanced on her crutches. "I've documented systematic boundary falsification designed to claim protected watershed land as buildable property. The evidence is comprehensive." Chen held up the report she'd given the receptionist. "I've started reading this. If what you're alleging is accurate, it's not just fraud. It's a violation of federal watershed protection statutes. That brings USFS and EPA into the picture. Which is why I'm also filing with the Forest Service this afternoon." "Smart." Chen gestured toward his office. "Come in, both of you. I want to go through this in detail." They spent the next 90 minutes walking Chen through every piece of evidence: the moved markers, the filled holes, the GPS discrepancies, the photographs Logan had taken of the burned-over survey sites. Chen asked sharp questions, made notes in the margins, and occasionally paused to shake his head. "This is remarkably thorough work," he said finally. "And if it holds up to verification, Cascadia is looking at criminal charges, not just civil penalties." "Will you issue an emergency halt to the approval vote?" Claire asked. Chen removed his glasses and cleaned them, a gesture that Logan recognized as stalling while he thought. "I can recommend one to the commission chair." Whether she agrees is another question. Cascadia has invested significant resources in this community. Jobs, tax revenue, political connections. There'll be pressure to let the process continue. There'll be more pressure when the EPA shuts down a completed development built on protected land. "True." Chen replaced his glasses. "I'll make the recommendation today. You should hear something by Wednesday at the latest. In the meantime, file with the Forest Service as planned. The more agencies involved, the harder this becomes to ignore or delay." It wasn't a guarantee, but it was progress. They left the building with Claire looking more energized than Logan had seen her since before the fire. "Phase 1 complete," she said as they got back in the truck. "Forest Service is next." The USFS field office was on the edge of town, a modular building surrounded by government vehicles and stacks of equipment. Logan had been here before on rescue coordination meetings. The Forest Service worked closely with SAR teams during backcountry emergencies. The ranger who met them was someone Logan knew, a woman named Patricia Reeves, who'd coordinated the evacuation during the wildfire. "Reed," she said, surprised. "Didn't expect to see you here. Thought you'd be recovering from that rescue the other day." "I am. This is Claire Morgan, the woman I pulled out." Patricia's expression shifted to recognition. "You were the surveyor trapped up on the access road. How's the ankle?" "Surgically repaired. I'll live." Claire held out another sealed envelope. "I need to file a report about the Pine Ridge fire, specifically about what caused it." Patricia took the envelope but didn't open it. "Last I heard, fire investigators ruled it accidental. Illegal burn pile that got out of control. That's the official story. The real story is in that report. Evidence that the burn was deliberately set to destroy survey markers documenting fraud by Cascadia Properties." Patricia's face went carefully neutral, the expression of a federal employee who'd just heard something that could become politically complicated. "That's a serious accusation, with serious evidence to back it up. GPS data, photographs, documentation of systematically moved boundary markers designed to claim protected watershed land. The fire was started half a mile from where I was working, 2 days after I began documenting the fraud. The timing isn't coincidence." Patricia opened the envelope and scanned the first few pages. Logan watched her face change as she read, professional skepticism giving way to concern. "If this is accurate," Patricia said slowly, We're looking at Endangered Species Act violations, Clean Water Act violations, fraud against the federal government. This is a mess, which is why it needs immediate investigation. I'll forward this to our law enforcement division today. They'll coordinate with the FBI if the fraud allegations pan out. Patricia looked at Claire with new respect. You realize you're potentially tanking a $50 million development project, right? Cascadia is not going to take this quietly. I'm counting on it being loud enough that they can't make it disappear. After they left the Forest Service office, Logan drove them to the post office, where Claire sent certified copies of her report to the State Land Use Board and the EPA regional office. By the time they finished, it was past noon and Claire was visibly exhausted, her face pale with pain she was trying to hide. You need to rest, Logan said. I need to make sure this doesn't get buried. You filed with 4 different agencies. Short of taking out a billboard, I don't know what else you can do today. He started driving toward his house. Let the bureaucracy work. Sometimes the system actually functions. Claire didn't argue, which told Logan exactly how much pain she was in. They drove in silence, rain still falling steadily, turning the world gray and soft. His phone rang as they pulled into the driveway. Unknown number. Logan answered on speaker. Is this Logan Reed? A man's voice, smooth and professional. Who's asking? Derek Holloway, Mountain Division Director for Cascadia Properties. I understand you've been helping Claire Morgan file some concerning allegations about our Pine Ridge development. Logan felt his stomach tighten. How did you get this number? Ms. Morgan listed you as an associated party on her county filing. I'm calling as a courtesy. I'd like to meet with both of you to discuss this situation before it escalates unnecessarily. Claire leaned toward the phone. There's nothing to discuss, Mr. Holloway. I've documented systematic survey fraud. The evidence speaks for itself. Evidence can be interpreted many ways, Ms. Morgan. I think if we sat down together, we could clear up these misunderstandings without involving multiple government agencies in what's essentially a technical dispute. It's not a technical dispute, it's fraud. Holloway's voice remained calm, almost friendly. I appreciate your conviction, but consider the consequences of these allegations. If you're wrong, and I believe you are, you've damaged your professional reputation and potentially opened yourself to defamation litigation. Cascadia has invested years and millions of dollars into this project. We protect our investments. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Logan felt something cold settle in his chest. We're done talking, he said, and ended the call. Claire was staring at the now silent phone. He knows we filed. Already. It's been less than 4 hours. He's got connections in the county office, probably someone monitoring new filings related to Cascadia projects. He threatened me. He threatened both of us. Logan looked at her. You still want to do this? Because it's going to get worse before it gets better. Claire's jaw tightened. He just confirmed everything I suspected. If this was really a technical dispute, he wouldn't be calling with barely veiled threats. He'd be filing corrections and cooperating with the investigation. The fact that he's trying to intimidate us means he knows exactly what we found. She wasn't wrong. Logan helped her inside, made sure she took her pain medication and elevated her leg, then stood in his kitchen trying to figure out what he'd gotten himself into. His phone rang again. This time it was Martinez. Hey man, you got a minute? Yeah, what's up? Heard something weird today. Guy came by the station asking questions about you, about the rescue last week. Wanted to know your schedule, where you lived, whether you had family. Logan went very still. What guy? Didn't give a name. Said he was with some nonprofit doing a feature on wildfire rescues. But something felt off about him, you know? Too interested in personal details, not enough interest in the actual rescue. What'd you tell him? Nothing. Told him we don't give out personal information about volunteers. But Reed, if someone's looking into you, you should probably know about it. Thanks for the heads up. Logan ended the call and found Claire watching him from the couch, her leg elevated on pillows. They're investigating you, she said. Looks like it. Because of me. Because you helped me. Because someone's worried about what we found. Logan sat down across from her. The question is how worried. Worried enough to threaten and investigate? Or worried enough to do something more direct? Claire didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice was quiet. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have involved you in this. I involved myself. I made the choice to help you gather that evidence. I made the choice to let you stay here. Those were my decisions. Decisions that might put you and Jake at risk. Logan thought about that, about the anonymous man asking questions at the rescue station, about Holloway's smooth threats on the phone, about $8 million and the kind of people who'd burn down a forest to protect that money. Then we make sure Jake's protected, he said. He can stay with Susan until this settles. She'll understand. And you? I finished what I started. They looked at each other across the small living room, rain drumming on the roof, the weight of consequences settling between them like something tangible. Logan knew he should be scared, should be backing away from this situation, protecting himself and his son, letting the authorities handle everything. But he kept thinking about Claire sitting alone on that mountain, watching smoke close in, knowing someone had put her there deliberately. Kept thinking about the moved markers and the falsified data and the casual assumption that nobody would care enough to fight back. Some things mattered more than safety. We should have a plan, Claire said. If this escalates. The living room window exploded inward. Logan's body reacted before his mind processed what was happening. He threw himself across the couch, covering Claire as glass rained down around them. Something heavy hit the floor and rolled, trailing smoke. Out! Logan yelled. Back door! Now! He grabbed Claire, half carrying her as they scrambled toward the kitchen. Behind them, the smoke grenade was filling the living room with thick chemical fog. Logan's eyes were streaming, his lungs burning, but he kept moving, one arm around Claire's waist, the other hand fumbling for the back door. They burst into the backyard and kept going, Claire hopping on one foot while Logan supported her weight. Rain soaked them immediately, cold and shocking after the smoke. Logan got them behind his truck, putting metal and engine block between them and the house. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands and dialed 911. This is Logan Reed at 847 Pine Street. Someone just threw a smoke grenade through my window. We need police and fire now. The dispatcher was asking questions, but Logan barely heard them. He was scanning the street, looking for whoever had done this, seeing only parked cars and rain and the smoke billowing from his broken window. Are you hurt? He asked Claire. No. Scared, but not hurt. Her voice was remarkably steady. That was a warning. A warning would be a phone call. That was assault. A warning that they're willing to escalate. Smoke grenade, not explosive, scary, not lethal. They wanted to frighten us without actually killing us. She was breathing hard, clutching his arm. This means we're close to something they really don't want exposed. Police arrived within 5 minutes, followed by fire trucks. Logan gave his statement 3 times, to the first officer, to the sergeant, to the detective who showed up 20 minutes later. Yes, he'd received a threatening phone call earlier. Yes, he'd filed reports about corporate fraud. No, he didn't see who threw the grenade. The detective, a woman named Foster with tired eyes and a skeptical expression, walked the scene while crime scene techs photographed everything. Smoke grenade is military surplus, she said, not something you pick up at a sporting goods store. Whoever did this had access to specialty equipment. Or hired someone who does, Claire said. Foster looked at her. You're the surveyor, the one who filed the fraud complaint this morning. News travels fast. In a town this size? Yeah, it does. Foster consulted her notes. I've got a call into Cascadia Properties, see if they want to make a statement, though I'm guessing they'll deny everything and lawyer up. What about protection? Logan asked. My 6-year-old son lives here. I can't have people throwing explosives through my windows. I'll have patrol increase drive-bys, and I'd suggest you both stay somewhere else for a few days while we investigate. Logan thought about his small house, his son's toys scattered across the floor, the life he'd carefully built now literally filled with smoke and broken glass. Yeah, he said quietly. We'll go somewhere else. After the police left and a boarding company secured the broken window, Logan packed bags for himself and Jake, then drove Claire to collect her things. They didn't talk much, both processing what had happened, what it meant, how quickly this had escalated from filing paperwork to violence. Where will you go? Claire asked as Logan loaded their bags into his truck. Susan's place. She's got room, and she's been through worse with me. You? I don't know. Hotel, I guess, but that's the first place they'll look. You filed your hotel information with the county, remember? It's in the public record now. Claire went quiet, and Logan could see her calculating options and finding them all inadequate. "Come to Susan's," he said. "She won't mind, and honestly, I'd rather keep you where I can see you. These people already tried to kill you once. I'm not giving them another chance." They drove to Susan's house on the north side of town, a comfortable craftsman with a wide porch and flower boxes that Emma had planted years ago. Susan took one look at them, soaked with rain, carrying overnight bags, Claire on crutches with a hunted expression, and simply held the door open. "Jake's watching a movie. Put your things in the guest room. I'll make tea." It was the kind of calm, practical response that Logan had learned to expect from his mother-in-law. Susan had buried her only daughter and helped Logan survive the aftermath. A smoke grenade through the window barely registered on her scale of crises. They sat in Susan's kitchen, Logan, Claire, and Susan, drinking tea while rain continued to fall outside. Logan explained everything: the survey fraud, the filed reports, the threatening phone call, the attack on his house. Susan listened without interrupting, her hands wrapped around her mug, her expression neutral. When Logan finished, she looked at Claire. "You're sure about the evidence? This isn't a misunderstanding or a technical error?" "I'm sure. Someone systematically moved boundary markers to falsify property boundaries. The proof is irrefutable." "And Logan's involved because he helped you document it?" "Logan's involved because he saved my life and refused to walk away when I needed help." Claire's voice was tight. "This is my fault. I should never have—" "Don't." Susan's voice was gentle but firm. "I've known Logan for 8 years. If he's helping you, it's because he chose to. That's who he is. Sometimes I think he needs to choose better, but I can't fault his heart." Logan felt something loosen in his chest. "I'm sorry I brought this to your door." "You brought what needed bringing. Jake's safe here, you're safe here, and we'll figure out the rest." Susan stood and began assembling ingredients for dinner. "Now, Claire needs to rest that ankle. Logan needs to stop looking like he's about to punch through a wall, and I need to feed my grandson before he tries to survive on juice boxes alone." They ate dinner together, Susan's signature pot roast that tasted like comfort and normalcy. Jake chattered about school, oblivious to the tension, and Logan watched his son with fierce protectiveness. This was what mattered. This small person who trusted absolutely that his father would keep him safe. After Jake went to bed, Logan sat with Claire on Susan's back porch, watching rain fall in the darkness. "They're not going to stop," Claire said quietly. "I know. The reports are filed. Multiple agencies are investigating, but that takes time, and in the meantime, whoever's behind this has resources and motivation, and apparently no ethical boundaries." Logan didn't disagree. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking we need to find out who specifically ordered the survey markers moved. Not just Cascadia as a corporate entity, but which person made that decision. Because that person is who we're really fighting. That's who's scared enough to throw smoke grenades through windows." "Holloway," Logan said. "The guy who called, Mountain Division Director. He'd have the authority." "Maybe. Or maybe he's just the public face. Could be someone higher up, someone with more to lose." Claire pulled out her phone, pulled up the research she'd done on Cascadia's corporate structure. The parent company is based in Seattle. Board of directors includes some serious wealth: real estate magnates, investment fund managers, people who've built careers on exploiting regulatory loopholes. "You think this goes higher than Holloway?" "I think $8 million is enough money to attract attention from people who make Holloway look like small potatoes." Logan felt the weight of that settling over him. They weren't just fighting a local development company. They were fighting people with real power, real connections, real ability to make problems disappear. "We should tell the detective," he said. "Give her the corporate research. Let law enforcement handle it." "Agreed. First thing tomorrow." Claire looked at him in the darkness. "You can still walk away from this, you know. You've already done more than anyone could ask. The reports are filed. The investigation is started. You don't have to keep fighting." Logan thought about that. About the safe choice, the smart choice, the choice that protected himself and Jake and the stable life he'd worked so hard to build. Then he thought about Claire's eyes when she'd talked about truth and measurements and fighting against people who thought reality could be whatever served their profit margin. "Someone threw a smoke grenade through my window," he said quietly. Tried to scare me into backing down. That's not how I'm built, Claire. When someone tries to intimidate me, my first instinct isn't to surrender. It's to push back harder. Even when it's dangerous? Especially when it's dangerous. Because if I back down now, they win. They get away with fraud and arson and attempted murder. And my son grows up learning that sometimes the right thing to do is nothing, because fighting back costs too much. Claire was quiet for a long moment. You're a better man than I deserve. You deserve someone who doesn't leave you to die on a burning mountain. That's a pretty low bar, Claire. She laughed, a real laugh, the first he'd heard from her. When you put it that way. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to rain, both knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new threats, new reasons to be afraid. But tonight they were safe, they were together, and they'd taken the first real steps toward exposing the truth. Logan's phone buzzed with a text from Detective Foster. Security footage from your street. Got a partial plate on a dark SUV leaving the scene. Running it now. Stay safe. He showed the text to Claire. Progress, she said. Yeah. Logan looked out at the rain-soaked darkness. One step at a time. Somewhere out there, people with money and power were scrambling to contain the damage from Claire's filed reports, making calls, hiring lawyers, probably planning their next move to shut down the investigation before it could gain momentum. But they'd made a mistake when they tried to kill Claire on that mountain. They'd created a witness who refused to be silenced, and they'd drawn the attention of a man who'd learned the hard way that some battles were worth fighting regardless of the cost. Logan Reed had carried Claire Morgan down a burning mountain because leaving her wasn't an option his conscience could process. And he'd keep carrying her, metaphorically now, instead of literally, until this was finished. Whatever that took. However long it lasted. Because some things mattered more than safety, and Claire Morgan's stubborn determination to expose the truth had somehow become one of them. Detective Foster called at 7 the next morning while Logan was making coffee in Susan's kitchen. Claire was still asleep in the guest room, and Jake was sprawled on the living room couch watching cartoons with the volume too loud. The SUV that left your street belongs to a security company called Titan Protection Services, Foster said without preamble. They provide executive security, risk management, that sort of thing, high-end clients, mostly corporate. Logan gripped the phone tighter. Let me guess. Cascadia Properties is a client. Can't confirm that yet, but I've got calls out. What I can tell you is that Titan's owner, guy named Marcus Vance, has a history. Military contractor, private security overseas, couple of incidents that didn't quite rise to the level of criminal charges, but got him blacklisted from government contracts. So someone hired professional muscle to throw a smoke grenade through my window. Looks that way. Which means this isn't some hothead making bad decisions. This is calculated intimidation by people who know what they're doing. Foster paused. I'm going to be straight with you, Mr. Reed. You and Miss Morgan have kicked over a hornet's nest. The fraud allegations are serious enough that the FBI's white-collar crime division is already making inquiries. When that happens, people with a lot to lose start getting desperate. What are you saying? I'm saying the smoke grenade was probably just a warning shot. If you keep pushing, if the investigation keeps building momentum, whoever's behind this might decide that warnings aren't enough. Her voice was grim. I can't give you 24-hour protection. I don't have the resources. Best I can do is increased patrols and a direct line to me if anything else happens. That's not very reassuring. It's not meant to be. It's meant to be realistic. Foster sighed. Look, what you two are doing, exposing fraud, risking your own safety to get the truth out there, it matters. But it also has consequences. Make sure you're prepared for them. After the call ended, Logan stood in Susan's kitchen feeling the full weight of what they'd started. This wasn't just about filing reports anymore. This was about going up against people who demonstrated they were willing to use violence, who had the resources to hire professional intimidators, who saw Claire and Logan as problems to be eliminated rather than citizens exercising their rights. Claire emerged from the guest room on her crutches, her hair pulled back, wearing the same clothes she'd worn yesterday because everything she owned had been packed hastily after the attack. I heard the phone, she said. What did Foster say? Logan told her about Titan Protection Services, about the FBI involvement, about Foster's warning. Claire listened with that same focused intensity he'd come to recognize, processing information and calculating implications. Professional security company means professional escalation, she said quietly. They won't make amateur mistakes. Whatever comes next will be planned and executed by people who know how to hurt us without getting caught. That's cheerful. That's realistic. Claire moved to the coffee maker, poured herself a cup with hands that were remarkably steady. But here's what they don't know. I'm not afraid of them. I was trapped on a burning mountain, Logan. I sat there with a broken ankle watching smoke close in and thinking I was going to die. And you know what kept me calm? The knowledge that my data was backed up, that my evidence was documented, that even if I died, the truth would eventually come out. Claire, I'm not being dramatic, I'm being honest. The worst thing they could do to me is kill me, and I've already made peace with that possibility. So threats and smoke grenades and professional intimidators, they're annoying, not effective. She took a sip of coffee. The question is whether you've made peace with it, because this is my fight, my career, my choice to stand up against fraud. But it's your life they're threatening now, your son who could be at risk. You have different stakes. Logan looked at her standing in his dead wife's mother's kitchen, injured and hunted and absolutely unbending in her determination to see this through. He thought about Jake in the next room, about the example he was setting, about what kind of man he wanted his son to grow up believing his father had been. I'm in, he said simply, until this is finished, whatever that takes. Claire's expression softened slightly. You're sure? I'm sure that walking away now means they win. I'm sure that I didn't carry you down that mountain just to let them scare us into silence a week later. And I'm sure that some things matter more than playing it safe. They looked at each other across Susan's kitchen, and Logan felt something shift between them. This wasn't just about fraud anymore, or even about justice. It was about two people who'd met in the worst possible circumstances and discovered they were both stubborn enough to stand when the sensible thing would be to run. Susan came downstairs then, took one look at their faces and said, You're planning something. We're planning to finish what we started, Claire said. That's what I was afraid of. Susan poured her own coffee. What's the next step? Logan was surprised by the question. You're not going to try to talk us out of it? Would it work? No. Then I'm not going to waste my breath. Susan sat at the table. But I'm going to insist on some ground rules. 1, Jake stays here until this is resolved. He doesn't need to be anywhere near whatever happens next. 2, you both check in with me twice a day so I know you're alive. 3, you don't do anything stupid without backup. Backup? Claire asked. Logan's not the only person in this town who knows how to help people. I've got friends, connections, people who owe me favors. You need someone watching your back while you fight this battle, you ask. Understood? Logan felt something tight in his chest loosen slightly. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when this is over and everyone's still breathing. Susan stood. Now, what's the actual plan? Claire pulled out her laptop. The County Planning Commission meets Thursday to vote on whether to halt the Cascadia development approval. We need to make sure that vote goes our way. That means gathering more evidence, making the fraud case so airtight that even political pressure can't overcome it. You've already documented the moved markers, Logan said. What else is there? Chain of custody. We can prove someone moved the markers, but we need to prove who specifically ordered it. That means finding contracts, work orders, communication between Cascadia and whoever actually did the physical work of digging up and replanting those boundary markers. That's internal corporate documentation. How do we get access to that? Claire smiled slightly. We don't. But the FBI will, once they execute search warrants. Our job is to give them enough probable cause to justify those warrants. And how do we do that? By finding the contractors who actually moved the markers and getting them to talk. Logan saw where this was going. You want to identify the people who did the physical labor and convince them to testify against Cascadia. Exactly. Someone had to dig up those markers. Someone had to know the GPS coordinates for where they were supposed to be and where to move them to. That's specialized knowledge. Not many people in this area would have those skills. So we find the contractors, approach them, and hope they're willing to flip on their employer rather than face conspiracy charges. It's not perfect, but it's better than waiting for the FBI to work through months of bureaucratic process while Cascadia's lawyers delay everything. Claire pulled up a list on her laptop. I've identified 4 local surveying and excavation companies that would have the equipment and expertise to move boundary markers. We start with them. Susan was watching this exchange with an expression Logan couldn't quite read. You realize you're talking about confronting people who might be part of a criminal conspiracy. We're talking about interviewing potential witnesses, Claire corrected. If they're innocent, they'll tell us they never worked on the Pine Ridge markers. If they're guilty, we'll know by their reaction. And if they're dangerous, then we don't approach them alone. Claire looked at Logan. This is where having backup matters. We go together, we stay in public places, we make sure people know where we are. It wasn't a perfect plan. It had about a dozen ways it could go wrong, and maybe one way it could go right. But Logan had learned over the past week that perfect plans were luxuries you didn't get when you were fighting people with more resources and fewer ethics. Okay, he said. We start with the contractors, but we're smart about it. No heroics, no taking unnecessary risks. Claire nodded. Agreed. They spent the next hour researching the 4 companies Claire had identified. 2 were larger operations with dozens of employees and established reputations. The other 2 were smaller, essentially 1 or 2 person outfits that took specialized contracts for surveying and site preparation work. The smaller companies are more likely, Claire said. Moving boundary markers isn't something you'd want a lot of witnesses to. You'd hire someone who could do the work quietly, who wouldn't ask too many questions, who'd be willing to bend rules for the right price. Logan looked at the names: Mountain Survey Solutions and Ridge Line Excavation, both locally owned, both operating out of small offices on the industrial side of town. We start with Mountain Survey Solutions, he said. Owner's name is Frank Garrison. Been in business about 8 years. No obvious connection to Cascadia, but that doesn't mean much. They left Susan's house at 9 after Logan had spent 20 minutes convincing Jake that yes, he had to stay with Grandma, and no, it wasn't punishment, it was just safer for right now. Jake had accepted this with the resigned pragmatism of a 6-year-old who'd learned that sometimes adults made decisions that didn't fully make sense but weren't worth arguing about. Mountain Survey Solutions operated out of a converted garage on Industrial Way, sandwiched between an auto body shop and a plumbing supply warehouse. Logan parked across the street, and they watched for a few minutes, looking for any sign that this was more than just a small surveying business. Looks normal, Claire said. Normal is good. They crossed the street together, Claire managing her crutches with practiced efficiency. The office door was unlocked, opening into a small reception area that smelled like coffee and old paper. A man in his 50s looked up from a cluttered desk, weathered face, calloused hands, the look of someone who spent more time outdoors than in. Help you? He asked. Frank Garrison? Logan said. That's me. My name's Logan Reed. This is Claire Morgan. We're looking into some surveying work that was done in the Pine Ridge area, wondering if you might have been involved. Garrison's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes, a wariness that hadn't been there before. What kind of surveying work? Boundary verification for a development project. Would have been in the last few months. Involved relocating some existing markers. Don't know anything about that. Garrison stood, his body language suddenly defensive. I don't relocate markers. That's not ethical surveying practice. We're not accusing you of anything, Claire said quickly. We're just trying to identify who did the work. If you have information about other surveyors operating in that area. I told you, I don't know anything. Garrison moved toward the door, his message clear. And I've got work to do. So unless you're here to hire me for legitimate surveying, I think we're done. Logan held up his hands in a placating gesture. Mr. Garrison, if someone approached you about moving markers, if you were offered money to do something unethical and you turned it down, that's actually helpful information. It narrows down who might have said yes. Garrison stopped, his hand on the door. For a long moment he didn't speak, and Logan could see the calculation happening behind his eyes, weighing risks, considering consequences, deciding how much to say. 6 months ago, Garrison said quietly, I got contacted by a guy claiming to represent a development company. Said they needed boundary work done on some mountain property. When I asked for specifics, he described moving existing markers to different coordinates. I told him that was fraud and hung up. Do you remember the name of the development company? He never said, just gave me a number to call if I changed my mind. Garrison looked at Claire directly. You're the surveyor who filed the fraud complaint, aren't you? I heard about it yesterday. County office, multiple agencies involved. Yes. Then you should know that there are people in this town who don't appreciate whistleblowers. People with money and influence who can make life very difficult for someone who causes problems. He opened the door wider. I answered your question. Now I'd appreciate it if you left and didn't come back. They walked back to Logan's truck in silence. Once inside, Claire said, He was scared. Yeah, he was also helpful. Someone approached him 6 months ago about moving markers. That timeline fits with when Cascadia would have been finalizing their development plans. But he didn't give us a name or any way to identify who approached him. No, but he confirmed this wasn't a one-time thing. Someone was actively recruiting surveyors to do the fraud work, which means there's a paper trail somewhere. Emails, phone records, payments. They drove to the second location, Ridgeline Excavation. This office was even smaller, basically a trailer in a gravel lot surrounded by heavy equipment. A younger man, maybe 30, was working on a backhoe when they pulled up. You Ridgeline Excavation? Logan called. The man looked over, suspicious. Who's asking? Logan introduced himself and Claire, explained they were looking into surveying work in the Pine Ridge area. The man's expression closed down immediately. Don't know anything about that. We haven't even told you what specific work we're asking about, Claire said. Don't need to. I know why you're here. Word travels in this business. You're the people causing trouble for Cascadia. He pointed toward the road. You need to leave. Now. We just want to ask, I said leave, or I call the sheriff and report you for trespassing. Logan recognized a dead end when he saw one. They got back in the truck and drove away, the excavation contractor watching them the entire time. Strike two, Claire said. He knew exactly what we were asking about before we finished the question, which means he's involved somehow. Or scared of people who are involved. Claire pulled out her phone, started making notes. Both contractors reacted defensively. Garrison at least gave us some information. The Ridgeline guy wouldn't even talk. Logan's phone rang. Detective Foster again. Mr. Reed, I need you to be very careful. We just got word that Titan Protection Services has been asking around about you and Ms. Morgan. They're trying to establish your routines, where you're staying, what vehicle you're driving. They're tracking us. More like reconnaissance, building a profile for future action. Foster's voice was tight with frustration. I can't prove they're planning anything illegal, but the pattern is clear. You two need to vary your routes, stay unpredictable, and for the love of all that's holy, don't go anywhere isolated or alone. We're together right now and we're being careful. Oh, good. Keep it that way. And Reed, the FBI wants to talk to both of you. They're taking the fraud allegations seriously, but they need your full cooperation. Can you come to the federal building this afternoon? Logan looked at Claire, who'd heard enough of the conversation to nod. Yeah, we'll be there. What time? 2 o'clock. Ask for Special Agent Carver. She's heading up the investigation. After the call ended, Logan drove them to a diner on Main Street. Public, well-lit, plenty of witnesses. They ordered lunch. Neither of them were particularly hungry for, and sat in a corner booth where they could watch the door. The FBI involvement is good, Claire said. That means real resources, real investigative power. It also means this gets bigger, more public, more dangerous for anyone trying to stop it. Which is why Titan Protection is escalating their surveillance. Claire pushed food around her plate. They're trying to figure out the best way to neutralize us before the FBI investigation gains too much momentum. Logan felt the cold weight of that truth. Neutralize. Such a clinical word for what they were really talking about. Violence, intimidation, possibly worse. We could back off, he said quietly. Give the FBI everything we have, let them handle it, get you somewhere safe until this blows over. You know that's not going to happen. Yeah, I know, but I had to offer. Claire smiled slightly. Appreciate the thought, but we're past the point of backing off. We filed reports, gathered evidence, kicked the hornet's nest like Foster said. The only way forward is through. They finished lunch and drove to the federal building, a nondescript concrete structure that housed various government agencies. Special Agent Carver met them in a sterile conference room on the third floor. A woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and the kind of presence that suggested she'd seen everything and wasn't easily impressed. "Miss Morgan, Mr. Reed, thank you for coming in." Carver gestured to chairs. "I've reviewed your fraud complaint and the supporting documentation. It's comprehensive work, almost suspiciously comprehensive for someone who claims to have stumbled onto this by accident." Claire bristled slightly. "I didn't stumble onto anything. I was conducting a legitimate survey when I discovered the markers had been moved. I documented what I found because that's my job." "And you, Mr. Reed? What's your role in this?" "I rescued Miss Morgan from the wildfire. Then I helped her gather additional evidence when she suspected the fire was deliberately set to destroy her survey data." Carver studied them both. "You understand that making false allegations of fraud is a serious crime? That wasting federal investigative resources carries penalties?" "We understand," Logan said. "We also understand that systematic boundary falsification to claim protected federal land is a serious crime. That's why we documented everything so carefully." Carver's expression softened slightly. "Good. Because I'm going to be honest with you. Cascadia Properties has some serious legal firepower. The minute we started making inquiries, they had a team of lawyers filing motions and demanding to see our evidence. They're going to fight this with everything they've got." "Can they stop the investigation?" Claire asked. "No, but they can slow it down, complicate it, make it harder to build a prosecutable case, which is why I need you two to tell me everything. Every detail, every piece of evidence, every interaction you've had related to this case." They spent the next 2 hours walking Carver through everything, from Claire's initial survey work to the moved markers, from the anonymous email warning to the wildfire, from the evidence-gathering expedition to the smoke grenade attack. Carver took notes, asked pointed questions, and occasionally made comments into a recording device. "The smoke grenade attack is particularly troubling," she said. "That's crossing a line from corporate fraud into violent intimidation. Do you have the forensic report from the local police?" "Detective Foster is handling that investigation," Logan said. "She identified the vehicle as belonging to Titan Protection Services." "Interesting," Carver made a note. "Titan has contracts with several major corporations. If we can prove they were acting on Cascadia's behalf, that's conspiracy to commit assault. Adds weight to the fraud charges." "What happens next?" Claire asked. "We execute search warrants on Cascadia's offices, seize relevant documents and communications, interview employees, build a case. It takes time. But if your evidence holds up, and I believe it will, we're looking at multiple felony counts against whoever ordered those markers moved." Carver looked at them seriously. "But here's what you need to understand. The people we're investigating have demonstrated they're willing to commit arson and assault to protect their interests. Until we have them in custody, you're both at risk. Real risk." "We're staying at a safe location," Logan said. "Varying our routines, staying together, being careful." "Good. Keep doing that. And if anything happens, anything at all that feels threatening or suspicious, you call me immediately." Carver handed them both business cards with her direct number. "I mean it, day or night. These people have already shown what they're capable of. Don't give them another opportunity." They left the federal building as afternoon was fading into evening. Logan felt the weight of exhaustion settling over him, not physical, but mental and emotional. The constant vigilance, the awareness that someone might be watching them, planning against them, waiting for an opportunity to escalate from intimidation to something worse. "You okay?" Claire asked as they got in the truck. "Tired, scared, angry." Logan started the engine. "Pick one." "All three is allowed." They drove back to Susan's house in silence. Jake met them at the door, launching himself at Logan with the uncomplicated joy of a child who'd missed his father. "Dad, Grandma let me help make cookies, and we built a fort, and can we watch a movie after dinner?" Logan held his son close, breathing in the simple scent of childhood, sugar and soap and innocence. "Yeah, buddy, we can watch a movie." Susan appeared in the doorway, took one look at their faces and said, "I'll order pizza. You two look like you need comfort food and a break from thinking." They spent the evening in forced normalcy, pizza and a Disney movie, Jake falling asleep between Logan and Claire on the couch, the weight of a 6-year-old a reminder of what actually mattered. When Logan carried Jake to bed and tucked him in, his son mumbled, "Love you, Dad." Love you too, buddy. More than anything. Back downstairs, Claire was standing at the window, looking out at the dark street. There's a car, she said quietly. Parked 3 houses down, dark SUV, been there for about 20 minutes. Logan felt his heart rate spike. He moved to the window, staying back from the glass. The vehicle was barely visible in the shadows between streetlights. Dark shape, tinted windows. No one visible inside. Could be nothing, he said. Could be someone visiting a neighbor. At 10 o'clock at night? Without going inside? Logan pulled out his phone and called Detective Foster. She answered on the second ring. There's a vehicle watching Susan's house. Dark SUV, looks like the same type that left the scene after the smoke grenade attack. I'll have a patrol unit swing by. Don't go outside, don't engage, just stay inside and keep the doors locked. 5 minutes later, a police cruiser appeared on the street, lights off. As it approached, the dark SUV's engine started and it pulled away smoothly. No rush, no panic. The cruiser followed it for 2 blocks before the SUV turned and disappeared into the maze of residential streets. The patrol officer came to the door, a young woman who looked barely old enough to be carrying a badge. Vehicle left before I could get a plate, she said apologetically. But I'll file a report and we'll increase patrols on this street. If it comes back, call immediately. After she left, Susan made tea while Logan and Claire sat at the kitchen table in silence. Finally, Susan said, "This can't continue. They're watching you, following you, escalating. Eventually, something's going to break." "The FBI is moving forward with the investigation," Claire said. "Once they execute search warrants, once they start making arrests, that could take weeks, months. What happens in the meantime?" Logan didn't have an answer. What happened in the meantime was they lived under threat, constantly looking over their shoulders, knowing that somewhere out there, people with resources and motivation were planning their next move. His phone buzzed with a text from a number he didn't recognize. "The County Planning Commission votes Thursday. Make sure Ms. Morgan understands the consequences of that vote going the wrong way." Logan showed the text to Claire. Her face went pale, then hard. "They're threatening to do something at the commission meeting," she said. "Or they're threatening to do something if the vote goes against them." Logan looked at Susan. "Thursday's 2 days away. If we can get through the vote, if the commission halts the development approval, then Cascadia loses their timeline. The whole project gets frozen while the investigation continues. And if the vote doesn't halt the approval, then Cascadia pushes forward, argues that the fraud allegations are just delays tactics, and we lose our best chance to stop them before the development is too far along to reverse." Claire was already pulling out her laptop. "Then we make sure the vote goes our way. We need to present at the commission meeting, make the case so clearly that they have no choice but to halt the approval." "You can barely walk," Susan pointed out. "How are you going to stand in front of a public meeting and present evidence?" "The same way I've done everything else this week, stubbornly and with help." Claire looked at Logan. "Will you stand with me at the meeting?" Logan thought about the threats, the surveillance, the dark SUV watching from the shadows. He thought about Jake sleeping upstairs, about the life he'd built that was now under siege, about all the reasons he should say no and walk away and let someone else fight this battle. Then he thought about Claire sitting on that mountain, alone and injured, choosing to document evidence even when she thought she might die, about the principle that some things mattered more than safety. "Yeah," he said, "I'll stand with you." Susan looked at both of them with an expression that mixed pride and worry in equal measure. "Then we'd better make sure you're prepared, because Thursday is going to be a war, and wars are won by the people who plan better and fight harder." She wasn't wrong. Thursday was 2 days away, and somewhere out there, Cascadia Properties and their hired intimidators were planning their own strategy. The question was whether Claire and Logan could outthink them, outmaneuver them, and survive long enough to tell the truth in a public forum where it couldn't be buried or threatened away. Logan looked at Claire across Susan's kitchen table, injured, exhausted, absolutely unbreakable in her determination, and felt something shift in his chest. This wasn't just about fraud anymore. It was about refusing to let fear win, about standing up when standing was hard, about being the kind of person his son could be proud of. Whatever Thursday brought, they'd face it together. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. Wednesday arrived with clear skies and the kind of crisp mountain air that made everything feel sharper, more defined. Logan woke early, checked the street from Susan's upstairs window. No dark SUVs, no suspicious vehicles, and went downstairs to find Claire already awake, laptop open, refining her presentation for tomorrow's commission meeting. "You sleep at all?" he asked. "Couple hours. Couldn't shut my brain off." She looked up, and Logan saw the strain around her eyes, the careful way she held herself to minimize the pain in her ankle. "I keep thinking about what could go wrong tomorrow. What if the commissioners have already been influenced by Cascadia? What if they dismiss the evidence as inconclusive? What if we just focus on what we can control?" Logan poured coffee, brought her a cup. "Your evidence is solid. Your presentation is clear. We'll get there early, we'll state our case, and we'll let the facts speak for themselves." "You make it sound simple." "It's not simple, but it's also not complicated. We tell the truth. That's all we can do." Claire smiled slightly. "When did you become the optimistic one?" "About the same time you became the one who worries." Logan sat across from her. "We've got one more day to prepare. Let's use it well." They spent the morning going through Claire's presentation slide by slide, making sure every piece of evidence was clearly explained, every photograph properly labeled, every GPS coordinate verified. Susan helped by playing devil's advocate, asking the tough questions commissioners might raise, forcing them to sharpen their arguments. At noon, Detective Foster called with an update that sent a chill through Logan's chest. "We found the person who threw the smoke grenade through your window," she said. "Contract worker hired by Titan Protection. He's cooperating in exchange for reduced charges, and he's given us documentation, text messages, payment records, orders that came directly from Marcus Vance at Titan." "That connects Titan to the assault," Logan said. "It does. But here's the interesting part. Vance's payment came from a shell company that traces back to Cascadia Properties' legal department. We've got a direct line from Cascadia to the intimidation tactics." Claire had been listening on speaker. "Can you arrest whoever ordered it?" "FBI is working on warrants now. Should have them executed by end of day. But read, Ms. Morgan, this also means they know the walls are closing in. People get desperate when they're cornered. Tomorrow's commission meeting is going to be volatile." "We're still presenting," Claire said firmly. "I figured you'd say that. I'll have officers at the meeting, plain clothes and uniform, but you need to understand the risk. If Cascadia sees that vote going against them, if they realize their whole project is about to collapse, I can't predict what they'll do." After the call ended, Susan said quietly, "You could let the FBI handle the presentation. Send them your evidence. Let federal agents make the case." "No." Claire's voice was absolute. "This is my work, my evidence. My profession they tried to corrupt. I'm not hiding while someone else tells my story." Logan understood. It wasn't about ego or glory. It was about standing up for what mattered, about refusing to let fear dictate choices. He'd felt the same way when he'd turned around on that burning trail, when he'd made the decision to carry Claire down instead of saving himself the easier way. Some things you had to do yourself. The afternoon passed in tense preparation. Logan picked up Jake from school, spent an hour playing trucks and reading stories, trying to give his son some normalcy in a week that had been anything but normal. Jake seemed oblivious to the tension, chattering about his upcoming birthday party, about the presents he hoped for, about the fort he and Grandma had built. "You're a good dad," Susan said later after Jake had gone to bed. "Emma would be proud of what you're doing." Logan felt something catch in his throat. He didn't talk about Emma much. The grief had dulled to a persistent ache rather than sharp agony, but it was still there, always there. "She'd probably tell me I'm being reckless," he said, "taking unnecessary risks when I've got a kid to raise." "She'd also tell you that showing Jake how to stand up for what's right matters more than playing it safe." Susan touched his arm gently. "You're teaching him courage, Logan. That's worth something." That night, Logan couldn't sleep. He lay in Susan's guest room listening to the house settle, thinking about tomorrow, about everything that could go wrong and the few things that might go right. Around midnight, he heard movement downstairs and found Claire in the kitchen, balanced on her crutches, staring out the window at the dark street. "Can't sleep either?" he asked. "Keep running through scenarios, what questions they'll ask, how to respond, whether I'll be able to stand long enough to present everything." Logan moved beside her at the window. "You'll be able to stand. And if you can't, I'll stand for you. We're in this together, remember? Claire turned to look at him, and in the dim light from the street, Logan saw something vulnerable in her expression that she usually kept hidden behind competence and determination. "Why are you doing this?" she asked quietly. "Really? You rescued me because that's who you are. I get that. But everything since helping me gather evidence, letting me stay in your home, standing with me against people who've threatened violence, you didn't have to do any of that. You've got a son, a life, reasons to walk away. So why haven't you?" Logan thought about how to answer, about all the complex motivations and simple truths tangled together. "Because when I carried you down that mountain, something changed. I'd spent 3 years building this careful, controlled life, making sure Jake was safe, making sure I never took risks that could leave him alone the way Emma's death left him without a mother. I built walls around everything that mattered and told myself it was protection. And then? And then I met you. This stubborn, brilliant woman sitting on concrete steps telling me to leave her behind because she understood math and survival odds. And I realized that teaching my son to be safe isn't the same as teaching him to be good. That sometimes the right thing costs something, and doing it anyway is what makes us more than just survivors." Claire was quiet for a long moment. "I've never been good at people," she said finally. "I'm better with data, with measurements, with things that can be quantified and verified. But you're the first person in a long time who's made me think maybe I've been measuring the wrong things." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I spent years building a career becoming excellent at my work, telling myself that professional competence was enough, that I didn't need connections or relationships or anyone depending on me. And then I was trapped on that mountain, and the only thing I could think about was dying alone. Not just physically alone, but alone in the larger sense. No one to miss me. No one whose life would be diminished by my absence." She looked at him directly. "You changed that. You and Jake, and even Susan. You made me part of something that mattered more than just being right about survey measurements." Logan felt the weight of that confession, the trust it represented. "You matter, Claire. Not because of your evidence or your professional competence, because of who you are. Stubborn and brilliant and brave enough to stand up when standing up is hard." They stood there in Susan's dark kitchen, close enough that Logan could feel the warmth of her, could see the flicker of emotion crossing her face. He thought about the week they'd shared, about carrying her weight and learning her strength, about the way catastrophe had somehow created connection where normal circumstances never would have. "Tomorrow's going to be intense," Claire said quietly. "Yeah. Whatever happens, thank you for not walking away, for standing with me when you didn't have to." Logan wanted to say something profound, something that captured the strange and powerful bond that had formed between them in just 7 days. Instead, he just said, "You're welcome." They stayed at the window together, watching the empty street, until Claire's pain medication began wearing off and she had to sit down. Logan helped her back to the guest room, made sure she had water and her medication within reach, and returned to his own bed where sleep finally found him in the early hours of Thursday morning. He woke to his phone ringing. Special Agent Carver calling at 6 a.m. "We executed warrants last night," she said without preamble. "Cascadia's offices, Titan Protection Services, Marcus Vance's personal residence. We've seized documents, computers, communications records, and Reed. It's worse than we thought." Logan sat up, suddenly completely awake. "How much worse?" "The fraud goes beyond just moving survey markers. We found evidence of bribes to local officials, falsified environmental impact reports, systematic violations of federal protection statutes. This isn't just one development. It's a pattern going back years. Multiple projects, multiple jurisdictions, always the same playbook. Falsify the surveys, bribe the approvals, build before anyone notices the violations." "How many people are involved?" "At least a dozen that we've identified so far, including Derek Holloway and 2 county commissioners." Carver paused. "The good news is we're making arrests this morning. The bad news is Cascadia's CEO is already mobilizing their legal team. They're going to fight this with everything they've got." "What about the commission meeting today?" "It's still happening. The commissioners who aren't under investigation will vote on whether to halt the approval. But Reed, with arrests happening this morning, with this becoming a major federal case, things are going to get chaotic. You and Miss Morgan need to be very careful." After the call, Logan found Claire already awake. dressed in professional clothes she'd borrowed from Susan, looking determined despite the visible exhaustion. FBI made arrests, he told her. Multiple people, including Holloway. The whole conspiracy is unraveling. Claire's expression was fierce satisfaction mixed with vindication. Good. Then today's vote becomes about ratifying what the investigation already proved. We're not asking them to believe us. We're asking them to acknowledge the truth. Susan made breakfast while they prepared, and Jake came down still sleepy, asking why everyone was awake so early. Logan explained that he and Claire had an important meeting, that Grandma would take him to school, that everything was okay. Are you going to be on TV? Jake asked, with 6-year-old interest. Maybe. The meeting's public, so there might be news cameras. Cool. Can I tell my friends my dad's going to be on TV? Logan hugged his son close, breathing in the simple scent of childhood innocence. Yeah, buddy, you can tell them. The county building was already crowded when they arrived at 8:30 for the 9 o'clock meeting. News vans filled the parking lot, reporters setting up cameras, people Logan didn't recognize milling around with the purposeful energy of those who sensed something important was happening. Detective Foster met them at the entrance, along with 2 uniformed officers. We've got security posted at all entrances, she said. No one gets in without going through screening. FBI has agents positioned throughout the building. You'll be as safe as we can make you. Have there been threats? Claire asked. Nothing specific, but with this morning's arrests, tensions are high. Just stay alert and stay close to security. They made their way to the commission chamber, a room designed for maybe 50 people that now held at least twice that. Logan recognized faces from the community, from the rescue service, from local businesses. He also recognized lawyers in expensive suits, clustered in groups, speaking in urgent whispers. David Chen from the planning department found them as they took seats in the front row. Ms. Morgan, Mr. Reed, hell of a week you've had. He shook their hands. I want you to know the commission takes your evidence seriously. With the FBI arrest this morning, with the documentation you've provided, I'm confident the vote will go the right way. What about the commissioners who were arrested? Logan asked. Recused themselves pending investigation. We've got enough for a quorum without them. Chen glanced toward the bench where commissioners were filing in. But be prepared for Cascadia's lawyers. They're going to argue that the arrests are premature, that the evidence is circumstantial, that halting the project causes irreparable financial harm. It's going to get adversarial. The commission chair, a woman in her 60s named Margaret Hollister, called the meeting to order at precisely 9 o'clock. The room fell silent as she read the agenda. Item 7 on today's schedule is a motion to temporarily halt approval of the Cascadia Properties Pine Ridge Resort Development pending investigation of alleged survey fraud and environmental violations. We'll hear from the complainant first, then from Cascadia's representatives, then proceed to discussion and vote. She looked directly at Claire. Ms. Morgan, you have 15 minutes to present your case. Claire stood, balanced on her crutches, and Logan stood with her, helping arrange the presentation materials on the lectern. She'd prepared a slideshow with photographs, GPS data, side-by-side comparisons of where markers should have been versus where they were found. My name is Claire Morgan, licensed land surveyor, she began, her voice steady and professional. 3 weeks ago, I was contracted to verify boundary markers for the Pine Ridge development. What I discovered was systematic fraud, deliberate falsification of property boundaries designed to claim approximately 43 acres of federally protected watershed land as buildable property. She walked them through the evidence methodically, showing the moved markers, the filled-in holes where original markers had been, the GPS discrepancies, the photographs Logan had taken of the burned-over survey sites. The room was absolutely silent, everyone leaning forward to see the images on the screen. The fraud isn't theoretical or arguable, Claire continued. These are measurements, coordinates, physical evidence. Someone moved these markers knowing it would allow development on protected land. Someone falsified survey data knowing it would defraud federal agencies and violate environmental protection statutes. And when I discovered this fraud, someone started a wildfire that burned 3,000 acres and nearly killed me. She showed the photograph of herself sitting on those concrete steps, injured and trapped, that Logan had taken with her camera. The image was stark and powerful. A woman alone on a burning mountain because she'd found the truth someone wanted buried. I'm asking this commission to halt the development approval until independent verification can be completed and the responsible parties can be held accountable. Not because I want to obstruct legitimate development, but because allowing fraud to succeed sends a message that truth doesn't matter, that measurements and data and professional ethics can be corrupted for profit. Claire paused, her eyes scanning the room. I refuse to accept that message, and I hope you will too. She sat down to absolute silence, broken only when Commissioner Hollister said quietly, "Thank you, Ms. Morgan. That was powerful testimony." Cascadia's lead attorney stood next, a man in an expensive suit with the kind of polished aggression that came from years of courtroom battles. His name was Richard Pemberton, and he looked supremely confident as he approached the lectern. Commissioners, what we've just heard is a tragic story based on misunderstanding and circumstantial evidence. Yes, Ms. Morgan found discrepancies in marker locations, but discrepancies can have many explanations: geological shift, previous survey errors, natural phenomena. To leap from discrepancies to deliberate fraud requires proof of intent, which Ms. Morgan has not provided. Logan felt Claire tense beside him, but she remained silent, letting Pemberton make his case. Furthermore, Pemberton continued, the FBI arrests this morning are based on preliminary evidence that has not been tested in court. My clients are innocent until proven guilty. Halting a $50 million development project based on unproven allegations causes irreparable financial harm and sets a dangerous precedent that any development can be frozen by unsubstantiated complaints. He went on for another 10 minutes, arguing procedure and technicalities, suggesting that Claire's evidence could be explained by innocent mistakes, implying that the whole investigation was an overreaction to what was essentially a civil dispute. Commissioner Hollister stopped him at the 15-minute mark. Mr. Pemberton, I appreciate the legal arguments, but I want to address something directly. We've received documentation from the FBI showing communications between Cascadia employees and contractors specifically discussing the relocation of boundary markers. How do you explain that? Pemberton didn't miss a beat. Without seeing the full context of those communications, I can't comment specifically, but I will note that boundary adjustments are a normal part of development work. The question is whether those adjustments were made with fraudulent intent or as good faith corrections to previous survey errors. The photographs Ms. Morgan showed us clearly indicate the original markers were removed and the holes filled in, another commissioner said. That's not a correction. That's deliberate concealment. Again, without forensic analysis, we can't know. We know enough. This from a third commissioner, a younger man Logan didn't recognize. We have survey fraud documented by a licensed professional. We have FBI arrests based on evidence of conspiracy. We have photographic proof of environmental violations. At what point do we stop making excuses for corporate malfeasance and start protecting our community? The room erupted in applause, quickly gavelled down by Commissioner Hollister. But Logan felt the shift in energy, felt the tide turning against Cascadia's carefully constructed arguments. Pemberton tried to regain control. Commissioners, I urge you to consider the economic impact of halting this development. Jobs will be lost, tax revenue will disappear, the county's reputation as business-friendly will be damaged. The county's reputation for integrity matters more than being business-friendly to fraud, Commissioner Hollister said sharply. Mr. Pemberton, unless you have evidence that directly refutes Miss Morgan's documentation, I think we've heard enough. Pemberton tried one more angle. I'd like to call Derek Holloway to provide testimony about Cascadia's development practices. Mr. Holloway was arrested this morning on federal conspiracy charges, Hollister interrupted. He's not available to testify. Do you have any other witnesses? Pemberton's composure cracked slightly. I'll need to consult with my clients. You have 5 minutes to do so. We'll take a brief recess. The commission filed out, and the room exploded into conversation. Logan felt Claire's hand grip his arm, her fingers tight with tension and hope. It's working, she whispered. They're taking us seriously. Don't celebrate yet. Pemberton's going to try something in those 5 minutes. Logan was right. When the commission reconvened, Pemberton had a new strategy. Commissioners, Cascadia Properties is prepared to make a proposal. We'll voluntarily pause development for 60 days to allow for independent survey verification. If that verification confirms discrepancies, we'll work with authorities to correct them. This preserves the project while addressing concerns about accuracy. It was a smart move, offering compromise, appearing reasonable, trying to avoid the full halt that would freeze everything pending criminal investigation. Commissioner Hollister looked at Claire. "Miss Morgan, does that address your concerns?" Claire stood carefully. "No, it doesn't. 60 days gives Cascadia time to further corrupt evidence, to pressure witnesses, to make the independent verification meaningless. What we need is an immediate and complete halt pending the full FBI investigation. Anything less allows the fraud to continue." "The FBI investigation could take months," Pemberton protested. "You're asking us to kill a project that employs hundreds of people based on allegations that haven't been proven." "The allegations have been proven," Claire shot back. "I've provided documentation. The FBI has made arrests based on that documentation. The only question is whether this commission has the courage to act on proven fraud, or whether you'll choose economic convenience over the law." It was a direct challenge, delivered with the same unflinching determination Logan had seen when Claire told him to leave her on that mountain. She was giving the commissioners no middle ground, no comfortable compromise, just a choice between truth and expedience. Commissioner Hollister looked at her fellow commissioners. "I'm ready to vote. Do I have a motion?" "I move to immediately and indefinitely halt all approval processes for the Cascadia Properties Pine Ridge Resort Development pending completion of the FBI investigation and independent verification of all survey data," the younger commissioner said. "Second," came from another voice. "All in favor?" 4 hands went up. Only one commissioner, an older man who'd been silent throughout, abstained. Motion carries 4-0 with 1 abstention. The Cascadia Properties Pine Ridge Resort Development approval is hereby halted pending investigation. Hollister's gavel came down with a sharp crack that echoed through the silent room. For a moment, no one moved. Then the room erupted, reporters rushing for phones, people applauding, Cascadia's lawyers gathering in urgent consultation. Logan felt Claire sag against him, the tension finally releasing. "We did it," she said, her voice barely audible. "You did it. That was all you." "No, it was us." Detective Foster appeared beside them. "We need to get you out of here. There's a back exit. FBI wants to debrief you, and I'd rather do it somewhere less public." They let Foster guide them through corridors and downstairs, emerging into a service area where an unmarked car was waiting. Special Agent Carver was in the driver's seat. "Get in. We've had reports of Titan protection personnel near the building. I'm not taking chances." The debrief happened in a secure federal facility, 3 hours of detailed questions about their evidence, their interactions with Cascadia representatives, the threats they'd received. By the time they finished, it was late afternoon and Logan was emotionally exhausted. "What happens now?" he asked Carver. "Now we build the criminal case. The development is frozen, which means no more damage to protected land. We've arrested the primary conspirators. We've seized financial records showing bribes and payments for fraud. It's going to take time to work through the courts, but Ms. Morgan's evidence gave us the foundation we needed." Carver looked at Claire with respect. "You did good work. Dangerous work, but good work. Thank you. One more thing. Titan Protection Services has been shut down pending investigation. Marcus Vance is in custody. The people who threatened you, who attacked Mr. Reed's home, they're no longer a threat." Logan felt something loosen in his chest that had been tight since the smoke grenade came through his window. "So it's over? The immediate danger is over. The legal battle is just beginning. But yeah, you two can go back to your normal lives now." Normal lives? Logan almost laughed. Nothing about the last week had been normal, and he suspected nothing would be quite the same going forward. Foster drove them back to Susan's house. The sun was setting, painting the mountains gold and orange, the same mountains where this had all started just 7 days ago. Logan thought about that timeline, how quickly everything had changed, how completely his carefully controlled existence had been upended by one decision to turn around on a burning trail. Susan met them at the door with Jake, who immediately launched into a story about how he'd seen his dad on the news at Grandma's friend's house, and everyone at school was talking about it. "You're famous, Dad. Marcus said his mom said you and Claire are heroes." Logan picked up his son, held him close. "We're not heroes, buddy. We just did what needed doing." "That's what heroes do," Jake said with absolute 6-year-old certainty. That night, after Jake was asleep, Logan found Claire packing her belongings. The sight hit him harder than he'd expected. "You're leaving," he said. "My ankle's healing. I can manage on my own now. And you've done more than enough, you and Susan both. I should give you your lives back." "What if we don't want them back? Not the way they were before, anyway." Claire stopped packing, turned to face him. "Logan, I know this started as crisis and necessity. I know we're probably not thinking clearly after everything that's happened. But Claire, I don't want you to leave. Not yet. Not until we've had time to figure out what this is when we're not running from smoke grenades and fighting corporate fraud." "What if there's nothing to figure out? What if this was just circumstance bringing two people together temporarily?" "Do you believe that?" Claire was quiet for a long moment. "No, I don't believe that. But I also don't know how to do this. How to be part of someone's life instead of just passing through it. I'm not good at people, remember?" "You're better than you think. Jake adores you, Susan respects you, and I—" Logan stopped, searching for the right words. "I haven't felt this connected to another person since Emma died. I wasn't looking for it, didn't think I wanted it. But here you are, and I'm not ready to let that go." Claire moved closer, balanced on her crutches, her gray eyes searching his face. "I have to go back to California eventually. My business, my apartment, my life, it's all there. I know, but it's only 4 hours away. We could make it work if we wanted to. Is that what you want? To try making this work?" Logan thought about the question, about all the rational reasons to let Claire walk away and return to the safe, controlled life he'd built. Then he thought about carrying her down that mountain, about standing beside her at the commission meeting, about the way she'd said it was us when they'd won. "Yeah," he said simply. "That's what I want." Claire smiled, and it transformed her whole face from determined competence to something warm and genuine. "Then I guess I'm not leaving yet." She stayed through the weekend, helping Logan clean up his house after the smoke grenade damage, playing blocks with Jake, sitting on Susan's porch in the evening talking about everything and nothing. They didn't make grand plans or promises they couldn't keep. They just existed together, learning each other outside the crisis that had brought them together. On Sunday afternoon, Claire's phone rang. It was David Chen from the planning department. "Miss Morgan, I wanted to give you an update. The independent survey team started work on the Pine Ridge site yesterday. Preliminary results confirm everything you documented, systematic boundary falsification across the entire development footprint. The fraud is even worse than we thought. Without your work, this would have gone through undetected." After the call, Claire looked at Logan with quiet satisfaction. It mattered. All of it. The investigation, the danger, the fight. It actually mattered. Of course it mattered. You stopped fraud, protected federal land, held powerful people accountable. That's not nothing, Claire. "I know, but hearing it confirmed, knowing that the independent verification backs up my work, it makes the risk feel worth it." 3 weeks later, Claire's ankle had healed enough for her to put weight on it. She'd been commuting back and forth to California, handling her business, but spending weekends in the mountains with Logan and Jake. They'd developed a rhythm. Friday evening arrivals, Saturday hikes on trails Claire could manage, Sunday family dinners with Susan. Jake had accepted Claire's presence with the easy adaptability of childhood, treating her like a favorite aunt who showed up regularly and knew interesting things about maps and measurements. One Saturday, while they were walking an easy trail near town, Jake asked Claire, "Are you going to be Dad's girlfriend?" Claire looked at Logan, who was trying very hard not to laugh. "Would that be okay with you if I was?" Jake considered this seriously. "I guess so. You're pretty nice, and you make Dad smile more." "Well then, I'll try to keep making him smile." That night, after Jake was asleep, Claire and Logan sat on his porch. His house was livable again, the window replaced, the smoke damage cleaned, watching stars emerge in the clear mountain sky. "Your son gave us permission to date," Claire said. "I heard. Very generous of him. Are we dating? Is that what this is?" Logan took her hand, felt her fingers curl around his. "I don't know what to call it. I just know I want you here. Want to see where this goes when we're not fighting for our lives." "Me too." They sat in comfortable silence, and Logan thought about the journey from that burning mountain to this quiet porch, about how catastrophe had somehow created connection, about how the woman he'd carried down a trail had become someone he couldn't imagine his life without. 6 months later, Claire relocated her business to the mountain region, maintaining clients in California, but basing herself near Logan and Jake. It wasn't a fairy tale. There were challenges and adjustments and moments when Logan wondered if they were moving too fast. But there were also morning coffees on the porch, hikes with Jake chattering between them, quiet evenings working side by side on their separate projects. The FBI prosecution of Cascadia Properties moved slowly through the courts. Derek Holloway and 3 others were convicted of fraud and conspiracy. The Pine Ridge development was permanently canceled, the land permanently protected. Claire testified at the trial, her evidence forming the foundation of the prosecution's case. On the 1-year anniversary of the day Logan had carried Claire down that burning mountain, they hiked back to the old fire lookout tower, the place where they'd spent that first night together, sealed in against smoke and cold, building trust in crisis. The forest was recovering. Green shoots pushed through ash, wildflowers blooming in clearings where fire had burned away the underbrush. The tower still stood, weathered but intact. "It's strange being back here," Claire said, looking up at the structure. "Last time I was terrified, injured, sure I was going to die. Last time I was carrying you and trying not to think about the same thing. And now?" Logan pulled her close, kissed her gently. "Now I'm just grateful. For the fire that brought us together, for your stubborn refusal to give up, for whatever series of coincidences led me to turn around on that trail and find you. That wasn't coincidence. That was you being exactly who you are. Someone who doesn't walk away when people need help." They stood together on the mountain where everything had started, where crisis had forged connection, where 2 people who thought they wanted solitary lives had discovered something better. Jake was with Susan for the day, giving Logan and Claire time alone. They spread a blanket near the tower and watched clouds drift across the sky, talking about the future they were building together. Claire's business was thriving with new contracts for environmental protection work. Logan had been promoted at his construction job. Jake was doing well in 1st grade, already talking about whether Claire would come to his class presentation next month. "He assumes you'll be there," Logan said. "Should I be? I want you to be. For the presentation, for the birthday parties, for all the ordinary moments that add up to a life." Claire was quiet for a moment, then said, "I never thought I'd want that. The ordinary moments, the family routines, the way you have to consider someone else in every decision. It seemed like it would be limiting. And now? Now I think maybe I was measuring the wrong things. Professional success, independence, the ability to work without compromise. Those things mattered because they were quantifiable. But this?" She gestured at the mountain, the sky, the space between them that had become comfortable and intimate. "This is harder to measure, but it matters more." Logan understood. He'd spent 3 years after Emma's death building walls, measuring his life in terms of safety and control and minimized risk. Meeting Claire had shattered those walls, shown him that love and connection required vulnerability, required the willingness to risk loss because the alternative was a life half-lived. "I love you," he said simply. Claire turned to look at him, her gray eyes bright with emotion. "I love you too. Even though you're reckless and stubborn and you made me fall for you by literally carrying me down a mountain," Logan laughed. "That was a one-time thing. I'm not planning to make a habit of mountain rescues." "Good. Because next time I'd rather we just hike together, without the fire and the fraud and the death threats." "Deal." They stayed on the mountain until sunset painted the sky orange and gold, the same colors Logan remembered from that desperate descent with Claire in his arms. But this time there was no smoke, no fear, no uncertainty, just 2 people who'd found each other in crisis and chosen to stay together in peace. When they finally hiked back down as darkness fell, Logan carried Claire's backpack, but not Claire herself. She walked beside him, her ankle fully healed, her stride confident. They were partners now, not rescuer and rescued. Equals building something that mattered more than either of them alone. Back at the house, Jake was waiting with Susan, bouncing with excitement about a project he wanted to show Claire. They spent the evening in domestic chaos, Jake's presentation about volcanoes, dinner that got slightly burned because everyone was distracted, bedtime routines that included Claire reading the story because Jake insisted she did the voices better.
After Jake finally fell asleep, Logan and Claire sat in the living room that had once been filled with smoke and fear, now just a comfortable space where they could exist together. "This is my life now," Claire said wonderingly. "Family dinners and bedtime stories and caring about a 6-year-old's volcano project." Having second thoughts? No. Just marveling at how different it is from what I planned. I was going to build a career, live alone, measure my success in professional achievement.
And then you carried me down a mountain, and everything changed. Logan pulled her close, felt her settle against him with the ease of familiarity. I wasn't looking for this either. Wasn't looking for anything except keeping Jake safe and not risking my heart again. But some things find you whether you're looking or not. Like wildfires. Like stubborn surveyors who refuse to let fraud go unexposed. Like single dads who can't walk away from people in trouble. They sat together in the quiet house, and Logan thought about the journey from that burning mountain to this peaceful moment, about how the worst day of Claire's life had become the beginning of both their best lives. The ridge behind the house was scarred from the fire, but green shoots were breaking through ash, nature reclaiming what had been temporarily destroyed. It was a slow process, healing and recovery, building something new from what fire had cleared away. But it was happening, day by day, shoot by shoot, moment by moment. Just like Logan and Claire, building something real and lasting from the crisis that had brought them together. The man who couldn't walk away had found a woman worth staying for. And the woman who measured everything in data had discovered that some things, love, family, belonging, defied measurement, but mattered most. The fire had cleared the ground, burning away what was false and fraudulent, exposing what was true and worth protecting. And in that cleared space, something new was growing, something real, something that would last.